my calculations are correct, when this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious It has begun!
Calm down, Doctor. Now is not the time for fear.
I am to misbehave.
Give them nothing, but take from them everything!
Program complete. Enter when ready.
Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Geek News Roundtable, where we take a particular discussion and we just have a roundtable to discuss it. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drak. I hope everybody's having an awesome day or night when you're listening to this. And this is yet again another kind of MMO follow-up. I know that some people wanted us to call it MMO talk, but it really is just kind of a roundtable discussion. And with me is the panel that you're also kind of used to of fellow geeks and fellow YouTubers. We have Brinton Volley. Brinton Volley, how has 2024 been treating you thus far? And have you actually been able to get to any MMOs in the last month or two?
I'm exhausted and no.
Yes, for those who don't remember, he is in he's taking his master's course. So MMOs are not really all that plausible when you're doing that. And I know a bunch of people will go, well, that one guy in Method was in the master's course when they did World First for Cataclysm or MOP, or I can't remember which one. Well, that was his choice. And I'm guaranteeing you that he regretted that to a great portion.
It also depends on the master's program.
It really does.
Mine's very extensive, so maybe he just had more opportunity than I.
No, I think he was in I can't remember the field exactly, but he was basically getting kind of a surgical master's degree. So
okay, he's an idiot.
Yeah, absolutely an idiot. But I mean, he was playing a holy paladin in the Cata days, and as one of my fellow holy paladins pointed out, it wasn't really all that hard to play a holy paladin in Cata. All you had to do was basically roll your face on the keyboard and occasionally hit Light of Dawn, and then you were good. And also
Holy Radiance.
What was that?
Also Holy Radiance.
Holy Radiance, yes. So. And also the voice you just barely heard is Rising Sun of Rising Sun Reviews. Rising Sun, how have MMOs treated you in 2024 thus far?
Well, I thought this was going to be a musical improv podcast, not an MMO roundtable, so I need to go put my drums away.
Oh, darn. Light Chan will be so disappointed. I'm sure she got out her harmonica.
Yeah, she's a great singer.
Yeah, she is, and she also has a really great harmonica. We're once again kind of sitting here to talk about MMOs, specifically the two biggest MMOs that are going to have major releases coming out this year. And actually two MMOs that we all not actively, but we have actively played in the past, and kind of bounce between WoW and FF14. But let's go ahead and get right into it, boys and girls. So the first thing that we have in terms of announcement is, Brinton, you've been excited about this the most. Final Fantasy XIV has yet another expansion coming out this year in the name of DAWNTRAIL. And do you want to go ahead and do the unveiling, or should I just go over the facts as things go along?
You're the host, my friend.
All right. So DAWNTRAIL is basically the continuation after Endwalker, where they're actually going to be bringing you to the continent. I believe this is the continent of Yogg-Tothrall, which is basically a lot of the descriptions that I've had with this is that it's going to be the tropical paradise kind of expansion, but at the same time there are going to be problems and situations to deal with in this new continent that we have to ingratiate ourselves and earn allies and also, gear up our characters, because that's what you do in an MMO, isn't it?
Yeah, like standard MMO things.
Yes. So we will be working in a variety of zones, including the new capital city of, I swear, if I murder this, I'm sorry, Brinton. Tuli-Yolal. We will be working with them.
That's pretty cool.
And then we will also be messing around in the mountainous region of Yogg-Tothrall called Urkopacha. Cool. That's how it's said. As well as Yogg-Tel, which is basically going to be kind of the Valley of the Four Winds kind of area, like this lush kind of meadow kind of area. And basically, this is where we're going to be doing our questing and the story that we're going to be dealing with a majority of the time in DAWNTRAIL. And I believe it's going to be its own thing, right? It's not necessarily continuing the story of the previous expansion, because FF14 doesn't really do that, right? You basically finish up the expansion and then get thrust into a whole new series of events, right?
Yeah, so Endwalker concludes the start of Final Fantasy XIV, even incorporating the story that was started in patch 1.0, which is no longer accessible.
Yes.
So it's a decade-long story that has come to an end, and the patches between the end of Endwalker and the start of DAWNTRAIL is just something, or rather my understanding, it's a preface to something that could be happening way later down the road. And the most recent story patch is the preface to DAWNTRAIL. So what is being stated about DAWNTRAIL is that it's quote unquote kind of like a second A Realm Reborn, kind of starting a new slate for the player character or the Warrior of Light, and engaging them and their allies in something entirely new.
Which is appropriate, because not only are we getting kind of this story restart, but this is also the expansion where they have officially decided to do a texture and graphical update, and I think even a UI update for FF14. So everything, it's basically Realm Reborn brand new is the way that they're kind of painting.
I have not heard about the UI update. The graphical is confirmed. However, if there is going to be I guess not really an overhaul, but just a general update to the UI, by all means, I will gladly accept it.
Yeah, that's what. So we're working off of a Game Informer article that kind of sums up everything that's going to be coming here. And one of the things they say is, which is why the update will affect near everything in the game, including shadows, materials, characters, UI, and more. So, and most of it is because they want to incorporate higher resolution textures in shadows, as well as updated character models. Basically, for World of Warcraft players, this is the Warlords of Draenor, where they're going to update the character models and be able to look all nice and pretty in 4K.
Well, I missed a part about the UI. However, great.
It's one of those things that they probably don't have a whole lot of updates. They'll just slowly update the UI over time, but they do want to mention that. Now, as far as features go for this expansion, first of all, the biggest thing that people have to know is that the level cap is going to be increased from 90 to 100. So it makes you wonder if FF14 at some point will have a level squish. I don't even know, because 90 to 100, that's big numbers. But the thing that has everybody excited is 2 new job classes. One of them is going to be a melee DPS job, and one of them is going to be a magical DPS job. I believe one of them is called the Viper, and I don't remember what the second one was called.
Yeah, the other one is called a Pictomancer, which is like a painting magic DPS.
That's right, because it's going to be like Realm from FF6. So go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so I haven't really kept up the news with it, so I was like looking through the DAWNTRAIL website and just like saw that. I was like, this is something I would have never expected, and now I want to play it.
No, I wouldn't have expected it either, because a lot of the job class stuff that happened in the early games, 6 included, hasn't really been touched upon in most games that have come afterwards. I did see that a lot of the things that have been incorporated into the monk while leveling in FF14 has actually had stuff from FF4, FF5, and even FF6 with Sabin. So at that point, that's cool that they're starting to incorporate this stuff. What did they call it? The Pectomancer? Is that what you said? Or the Pictomancer?
Like a picture.
Yeah. So at that point, for those who don't know the concept, it's based off of Realm Eroni from Final Fantasy VI, who basically would sketch enemies in front of her and use their attacks against them. So one of the most iconic moments that the game teaches you about it is when you use it against the comedic character Ultros. and he does not know how to deal with it, basically. So it's going to be a lot of that. The Viper, however, it looks like it's going to be kind of a gunslinger class from what I could tell.
It looks like it's more swords than guns.
I did see the guns might be incorporated into it.
Okay.
No, the only jobs right now, Adam, that have a gun element are machinist and literally gunbreaker.
So at that point, the Viper would be swords, or
yeah, it's supposed to be. It shares...
A lot of the stuff I've seen for it looks kind of swashbuckly. So at that point,
well, yeah, it's I mean, I'm sure we'll learn more about the lore of Viper once those who gain access to the job and share more details to the internet. It shares the same gear as a ninja, so it's a dual wielding bladed job that at some point in its rotation allows you to combine the two blades into like a singular blade, almost like a dual wielding lightsaber, and just go ham on your enemies.
Never been done in Final Fantasy. It's one of those things that I've wanted to see somebody do it, and so that's kind of exciting. Actually, I might mess around with it.
It is interesting that it shares gear with ninja, because like the other like sword class is samurai, which is like much slower in gameplay than I would have expected for a sword class. Well, Viper, it feels like a lot faster, which fits ninja more.
Which is funny because I've seen some gameplay of the samurai versus the ninja, and it's slightly surprising because in the past, in most Final Fantasy games, they both have been considered a fairly fast class. Even in Strangers of Paradise, when you have a ninja and a samurai class, they both are really fast in what they do, which in that game is samurai is basically two-handed katanas, and the ninja is ninja swords, which is basically just short swords.
Yeah, with 14, like samurai feels like very like precise in its strikes, more so than like spam and slash a lot of times. So that's could also just be how it feels in how Final Fantasy 14 does things, which is like slower combat in general as compared to like WoW.
Right. And the other thing I also find that's very interesting, and maybe this has just been the case for other job classes, but they are actually going to allow you the same amount of kind of job quests and storytelling that they have for a lot of the other classes. Whereas, you know, the experience that I have is like in WoW and in even some other MMOs where if there's a brand new class, they are basically treated like, okay, well, they've been here since this point. So you don't get to go back to level 1 and have job classes or job quest lines that are going to be going back to level 1. They're going to start at like level 40, which to me, that's cool. Because then at that point, you're basically telling the lore of a class and being able to showcase, okay, this is what this class is. This is why you should care about it.
Yeah. Do you know what level you start as with those jobs, Brinton?
It will be... sorry, my brain just went blank. It's going to be 20 levels behind the current level cap. So they're going to...
80?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to start at 80 because the cap will go to 100. So you would have to level from 80 to 90 if you wanted to play them through DAWNTRAIL.
Oh, this is interesting. They have no associated class with them. So it's not a branch. You can just get into it.
Yeah, it's not like the Realm Reborn classes, Adam, where, for example, you played Pugilist until Monk. And that change was made with the first expansion, where the new jobs, you could just get right into them instead of having to have an associated class prior.
Right, but that's still exciting to me. Like there is basically what they're saying with it to me is like no prerequisites. You can jump right into it. Kind of thing. But even WoW, they put the prerequisite of, okay, you have to have a character at this level and then you can access it, or you have to have this expansion, obviously, and then you can play it.
Well, I do want to state, you have, like, if you want to get into Viper or Pictomancer, you do have to have the DAWNTRAIL expansion purchased, and you have to have at least a level 80 another job at level 80 before you can access it. So we gotta get her. So we gotta get your main and my alt to level 80 before then,
Right.
so that way you can enjoy one of them.
And it actually looks like Pictomancer is the exact same thing. So you can get right into it at level 80 and go have fun with it. The interesting part, though, is that according to at least the wikis that are gathering information on it, where the job classes, at least that I've dealt with, you've said that you can deal with their job quests in the various areas. These are set. If you want to do their job quests for Viper, you have to go to Ul'dah to do that one. And then the Pictomancer is strictly in Gridania. So that's where you do your questing for the Pictomancer, is in Gridania, and then it moves you, I'm guessing, into the new continent.
We don't know. That's where that's just the starting point. That's where you go to unlock it.
Yep.
And it's very similar for all the other jobs, except for maybe the Heavensward ones, where you can pick them up right in the main zone of Heavensward, which I'm not going to state because that would be spoilers to you. But all the other jobs, they get picked up depending on where the developers decided you go start them. Most of them start in Ul'dah, believe it or not. The ones in Stormblood do.
Yeah, that's true.
The ones it looks like Viper is also starting in Ul'dah. Man, they really love Ul'dah. Shadowbringers.
Yeah, because Shadowbringers was Dancer, which I think that was in Limitless, whatever is that?
Limenza.
Yeah, that's what that one was.
Yeah, Shadowbringers is the only expansion that broke that theme, but whatever.
So along with that, we have level capping, right? So we have 2 new jobs for people to get into. We have new dungeons, obviously, new gear, new recipes for crafters and gatherers, new variant dungeons, new alliance raids, 8-player raids, and ultimate raids. I do not believe a lot of that has been named yet, but it will coincide. Oh, it has it? Okay. Cool.
Yeah, the 8-man raid is called the Arcadion, which is an original story to 14. The 24-man raid is called Echoes of Vana'diel.
This is the thing that's connected to FF11.
Final Fantasy. Yes, correct. The dungeons, the variant dungeons, what those are called, we don't know.
Now,
when they
say
out.
Variant dungeons, are those the ones that everything conforms down to level grouping and stuff like that, or does variant mean something else?
It means something else.
Okay.
It was new to the Endwalker patch series, which I'm actually trying to get through. So I haven't unlocked any of them yet. I actually don't even know anything about it. It's content I haven't done.
Yes, this is actually the thing that I've seen a lot of veteran Final Fantasy XIV players very happy, because a lot of people have loved that with Shadowbringers they incorporated elements of Ivalice or Final Fantasy XII in Final Fantasy Tactics. With Endwalker, they incorporated a lot of Final Fantasy IV, and now this is basically 14 paying homage to the previous MMO, FF11, with Echoes of Vana'diel. So I know a lot of people who are excited about this one, but just kind of going down the features that we also have a limited job being announced called the Beastmaster, which I'm guessing is not... That's kind of funny, because Beastmaster was actually a really powerful class in FF11, but they are saying it's limited. I wonder, because if I remember correctly, 11's Beastmaster was kind of game-breaking in a way, and maybe that's why it's got the title of limited job, so that they don't immediately get the impression that you can start breaking the game with it, so to speak. But I do love that.
Limited jobs have a very niche type of content. There's already a limited job currently in the game called Blue Mage.
Yes, and for the record, Blue Mage is also getting an update with this. So
yeah, the essentially the idea is being able to play these jobs that are very game breaky without essentially breaking the game. And the concept is that these jobs will eventually reach the same new level cap of 100. It's very, very, very niche content. Can be can be done within reason solo, although it's a lot more fun to do it with people. So
Obviously,
that's
yeah.
something. So that's something I'm willing to mess around with you with, whether it be Blue Mage or Beastmaster. However, I don't think Beastmaster is going to come out like day one. I think
No.
it's going to come out in patches.
No, the way that they're talking about it is, I think internally they're still working on it. So at that point, it'll probably be introduced as the expansion goes along.
Yes.
So also we are going to have new races. First of all, Hrothgar can rejoice because they now have a female variant, which is funny because I always thought that the Hrothgar were based off of the Ronso from FF10, but turns out they're not. And I'm like, well, there were female Ronso. I don't know why this is such a big thing. Apparently, the actual Hrothgar, we hadn't seen female Hrothgar until this point. And this is basically also a response to the fact that people also wanted male, oh crap, what are they called? Viera. They wanted male Viera because, speaking of, somebody actually on this panel plays a male Viera. So, there you go. But we also have a new race, although they aren't clear as to whether or not it's playable just yet. And that is the Pelu Pelu, who are going to be a race living in Yogg-Tyrol. I'm guessing that with the vagueness of it, they might allow for it to be a playable race later on, but maybe for this expansion, not quite.
I'll clarify that for you, Adam. So they're just an ally to the player
that's
character.
What I thought.
They're like the, you know how we've encountered beast tribes within A Realm Reborn?
Right.
They are supposed to be the equivalent to a beast tribe for the DAWNTRAIL expansion.
So indigenous. Okay. I like that.
Yeah, there are every expansion has a new set of beast tribes that you can ally with during the patch content. That's again something I will cover with you. It's very
for those who can't tell,
content.
Like I'm one of the people that, even though I am a Final Fantasy fan, I did not immediately jump over to 14. And so I've actually just recently made the jump because I wasn't playing Dragonflight at the time. And Brinton has been showing me the ropes. So that's why he's saying he has a plan and everything like that, in case you're confused.
Yeah, I have this
I'm not a veteran player by any stretch.
I have a roadmap all the way to all the way through the end of patch 2.0. And then once we get to the end of 2.0, then I'm going to take a second to patch myself up all the way through from 2.1 to 2.5 before we, leading into the first expansion.
Gotcha.
It's and then I'm going to create a roadmap and then I'm going to leave it up to Adam whether, there's certain things that we have to do, but then some of the more optional things I'll leave up to you if you want to do with me or if you want to do it on your own.
Yes.
There seems to be a lot where it's not obvious what is really important to do versus what is just extra experience.
For me, it's just I'm more interested in the story than anything else, and if I want to mess around in side content, I'll probably mess around in side content. But I made it pretty clear early on to Brinton, story is 100% to me. That's what I care about.
Yeah, there's certain trials and raids that we absolutely have to do, or else we won't be able to progress the main scenario quests. Otherwise, a lot of side dungeons, expert dungeons, or other types of raiding. Again, I will completely leave it up to Adam if he wants to do it with me right there and then, or hey, this is very side and optional.
Because the other part of this that makes it very complicated is we both live very, very busy and complicated lives. So trying to get things to come together, it's pretty difficult.
Yeah, ever since I started grad school, we haven't even touched I haven't even touched Final Fantasy 14 with Adam. And during my Christmas break, I took that time to play Dragonflight, play my main character, and
we've spent more time in
Fantasy.
WoW in the last few months than we have in FF14, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, and then as soon as this new semester started, I have just been go.
Right.
And then as soon as the semester's done, I'm getting my tonsils out. So I'm just
Yay!
not. I just can't seem to take a break. But that's me.
But so moving further into the features, though, so we have all that stuff. We also have new lifestyle content that's being introduced called Cosmic Exploration. Is this what I think it is? Do I get it? Do I get a starship?
I don't know.
Because I haven't. I actually don't have this on the one that I found, and then the official 14 page just states that it's a feature. So
yeah, it's similar to a new type of content that came out with Endwalker called Island Sanctuary.
There you go. Okay.
Again, I haven't even touched Island Sanctuary, and at this point, I'm so far behind that I don't even care.
It's almost like we have real lives outside of it.
So it looks like you like go to different planets to explore and like bring back resources.
Yay! I get a blue whale.
That is my understanding as well, and that's literally all I know.
Yep. Like I said, we also do have gear crafting recipes. Field operations are going to be new variant dungeons. The ultimate raid is called Futures Rewritten Ultimate. So that's also going to be coming. Also, new trials, new Unreal trials. There will be PvP updates. I didn't even know PvP existed in FF14. That's surprising.
It's not the greatest.
Oh, good. I don't have to worry about it then.
No, PvP is so optional in Final Fantasy XIV. Like, even way more optional than freaking WoW.
Yeah, and WoW has actually started to take kind of that casual approach with it, which is funny. You're gonna have to explain what this is, guys, because inconceivably further Hildebrand adventures. That sounds to me like there's a lot of these Hildebrand adventures.
Oh yes. Hildebrand is very optional, and I am not giving you the option to not do it.
That sounds like Maximilian of Northshire in WoW. It really does. Where it's supposed to be like the Don Juan DeMarco kind of thing.
Yeah, we're doing Hildebrand 100%.
All right,
I'm just gonna leave it at that.
I don't know how I've done it, so yeah. If I get back to Final Fantasy 14, I'll have to do those.
Yes, apparently there are also deep dungeons. Is this what I think it is? In FF Tactics, deep dungeons were basically dungeons that were extremely long and would increase in difficulty each floor and get basically absurdly worse as time went on. Is that what these deep dungeons are?
Yes, minus it gets absurdly worse.
Okay, all right.
It's
That's good,
a really
because
good
the FF Tactics deep dungeon was horrible.
It's a really good way, depending on because they have different deep dungeons for what expansion they came out in.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good way to learn how to play your job at that max level or the max level of that time. And when you complete like 10 floors, you get a buttload of experience. So it's really good for learning how to play your job at that expansion's, or learning how to play a job at that expansion's max level.
It's dungeon content, but solo? Or
no, you can't do it by yourself. You gotta go in with
party.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was gonna make the comparison. So is it like Delves from War Within? But it sounds to me like no, it is still dungeon content.
Yeah, it's a really good way to level up alts, especially DPS. Considering we're getting 2 new DPS classes, those like queuing up solo as a DPS in DAWNTRAIL is probably going to really suck.
Actually, in regards to that, the fact that we're adding in 2 more DPS, because you guys have probably played a little bit more into the expansion, and I know that Brinton has access to the end game. I'm guessing that you do as well, Rising Sun. The fact that they're adding 2 DPS, do we think that's going to hurt the class economy, so to speak? Like, is there going to be way more DPS to manage than there are tanks and healers for it, or is it just going to be fine?
I think it might make it a little bit worse, but I feel like as it is, DPS queues take the longest.
Mm-hmm.
So which isn't ideal, but I also feel like it's not that big of an issue. Like you can get something within like 10 minutes typically.
Because I'm guessing there isn't like a support class in this game, like they're trying to do with augmentation evokers.
There are, but
Okay.
they just count as normal DPS. There's Dancer and Bard, which are both like DPS, but a big part of their damage comes from their support moves. Like
from
Dancer,
buffing and stuff like that, you mean?
yeah, like Dancer,
Yes.
that they pick like another player, and whenever like they give themselves a buff, that other player gets the same buff.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
they also have like a group buff on a cooldown, and then Bard just like gives the party like basically a constant damage buff that they like cycle between.
Because that sounds a lot like FF11, which kind of messed around in that particular form as well, as like dancers and bards, and I think there was a third one where they were solely based around buffs. They didn't really heal, although I think the third one had like a heal over time kind of thing. It was mainly
Yeah.
you were in the middle of like the melee or the casters, and you were just buffing their damage, and that in turn fuels your damage, kind of thing.
Yeah, so I'd say the Dancer and Bard are like the equivalent to the augmentation evoker in WoW. Like they
Right.
do some damage on their own, but that's like not where that's not where a big portion of their damage comes from. I
Mhm.
don't know like the ratio for Final Fantasy 14.
Okay. So back into the features for this. So apparently there are going to be gold saucer updates. I didn't even know gold saucer was a thing. Is this just like end game content?
No, if we wanted, we're probably high enough level to go unlock it.
Okay. So
It's a bunch of mini games. So
so
I mean,
basically
I don't.
FF7 gold saucer.
That's how it came across to me. I don't
Mhm.
really engage with it too much.
Okay. And then more importantly, the thing that we ultimately have to talk about, because I actually have seen some people having discussions about this, is the system update, which is, so like we said, the graphic updates are going to be significant for this, and because of that, they have had to up the minimum system requirements for Final Fantasy 14, and people are going to have to start adhering to them once I'm guessing DAWNTRAIL is officially hitting. So that could be in the pre-patch, but more than likely it's when the expansion officially launches. So really quick, just kind of going over these minimum system requirements. You will need to have Windows 10 64-bit or Windows 11 64-bit. So sorry, guys. You will also need to have a i7 6700 or higher. You will have to have a minimum RAM of 8 gigabytes, which I think most people do these days. 140 gigabytes for hard drive or solid state drive space, which for MMOs, that's still pretty big, considering that.
Say that one more time. Sorry.
140, so 140 gigabytes of hard drive space
Oh
for
God.
14.
Okay.
And this
Yeah.
is the one that ultimately kind of hurts me, at least for the recommended, but we're talking the minimum. So the minimum is you need to have a GeForce graphics card of GTX 970 or higher, or a Radeon RX 480 or higher, and you must be able to do 720p screen resolution. That's minimum. But the recommended is the one that kind of made at least me and a few other friends cringe a little bit, because obviously the same system OS. The CPU is i7 9700 or higher, which I can already tell you I don't have. Thankfully, I meet the RAM requirements of 16 gigabytes. You still need 140 for hard drive space. And the graphics card requirements are GeForce RTX 2060 or higher, or Radeon RX 5600 XT or higher. And you need to be able to, at minimum, have a screen resolution of 1080p. So at that point, that already hurt. I have no problem telling you guys that hurts me, because I upgraded my graphics card like a few years ago, and that's a 1650.
I would need to review my graphics card. Everything else I meet, and then some. So
Because like RAM, I can tell you I meet, because for the last 5 or so years, I haven't had a system that doesn't have 32 gigs of RAM, because I edit. So that isn't the issue. For me, it's probably going to be the CPU and the GPU.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's like they're so new for recommended, because that's a 9700, so like 9th gen, which that's like 4 or 5 years ago is when this
Uh-huh.
came out. So
Right.
I think the minimum most people can play, but the recommended a lot of people won't meet. And yeah, the graphics card 2060, that's only like a couple years old, isn't it?
The 2060 would have been 3 or 4 years old, yeah, probably. Because I think right now we're in the 30s at this
Oh,
point, if you're cutting
I
edge.
I have a 40, and I just got my
Oh,
computer
there
a
you
couple
go,
months ago.
40s. So yeah, probably 2 to 4 years, roughly. So that might be complicated for some. I don't know. Are graphics cards still high because of 2020? They shift every now and again.
Yeah, I think they like came back down, but yeah,
Yeah.
looks like they came out in 2020 or 2019.
Yeah. So at that point, I mean, it's plausible to be able to get them and probably discounted, although like significantly discounted, I don't think so. But those are the biggest things I'm concerned about. Is my CPU. I can guarantee you it's an i7, but it's probably not 9700, and the 2060 is concerning to me as well. But I mean, I do meet the minimum system requirements, so maybe I'd be able to squeak past it. This is definitely a different kind of upgrade, because the last time I had to deal with a system requirements upgrade was Warlords of Draenor, and even then I was like just barely a step below the graphical requirements, so it never affected me. But this is definitely a bigger push. I've seen a lot of people online who are concerned about a lot of these upgraded requirements. Are you guys concerned about it at all? Is this going to like really hurt your wallet to be able to do it?
As I said, I would need to review my graphics card. Otherwise, I was worried about my RAM, which I no longer am worried about. So it's more my graphics card, and yes, I like it's making my bank account quiver a little bit.
Yes. Much like how
Yeah.
most years in the gaming industry are now. What about you, Rising Sun? Because I think you do actually probably keep your PC more up to date.
Well, I did buy a new computer like in December, but it was also just like a Costco computer, so I'm good for all these requirements, but not by as much as I would have expected to.
Right.
I feel like most people who like buy a computer every few years that's a decent computer, like not super expensive, but not the cheapest one, will be okay. But I can see a lot of people still not hitting the recommended system. I think the vast majority of people who are interested in playing would be good for the minimum.
Yes. Okay. Because the way that I kind of see it is a lot of those better models and better resolutions, things like that, are probably going to be just in the DAWNTRAIL content. So you still will be able to do everything up until Endwalker. So I think you'll be okay. It's just when you get into DAWNTRAIL, you might have issues.
I don't think that'll matter too much because like the gameplay itself is pretty much all the same all throughout. Like the graphics and everything, mostly the same, maybe a few exceptions. I think they're updating the graphics all throughout the game. So so other than maybe a few small exceptions, I think if there is an issue somewhere, it'd be an issue throughout the entire game.
Yeah.
There's also like the cutscenes, which I think a lot of those are like rendered on the fly, so that could be an issue.
Maybe, yeah.
But again, if you still meet the minimum requirements, you probably still be fine. They just won't be as high quality.
What's really sad is like I actually I just barely got a new toy this week. I just got a laptop for a bunch of side stuff that I'm doing, and also for work. And the funniest thing is that it can meet a lot of these requirements. Except I think it's technically a GP I think it's a GTX 40 series, but its GPU for it is like I think it's 8 gigs, so it obviously would have issues going into that content. So it's not like I'm going to be using that for FF14, but it would have issues because you would definitely need to have a GPU memory of like 16 gigs or above to be able to make that plausible. So, yeah, I mean, I get where a lot of people are having concerns about this, but I have a feeling that the only way we're going to know this, and you guys would probably know better than me, do they do like PTR or public test realms, or where people can get in and actually test this and be able to show it for themselves? Because, I mean, WoW obviously does it. I know the Old Republic used to.
I I haven't heard of any like select group of people who have access to like a beta build of the game.
Right.
There is like the only PTR I know that exists is in the hands of the developers.
Yeah, so it's probably a lot
Um,
of internal testing then.
yeah,
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 Or maybe even local PTRs, but not international ones.
Yeah.
yeah. The one thing that because I do tend to compare and contrast WoW from Final Fantasy 14 and then back and forth. I think one thing that Final Fantasy 14 could do better is the like doing an equivalent of a pre-patch like WoW does. That because I think it's really nice how I can have an opportunity to play around with the changes a couple of weeks before the expansion officially hits. So it can give me a chance of like moving around buttons, possibly relearning bits of my rotation, being acquainted with like the new features, etc., etc. Final Fantasy 14 does not do that. It's literally one day Endwalker 6.5,
They just kind of
and
drop
then
it on you.
and then DAWNTRAIL 7.0. Everybody's learning everything all at once. And if there are like a lot of really huge job changes, then that takes time because you close out the game the night before, go in the day of, and everything's brand new. And it's it's like a very there's a learning like another learning curve, and then you can hop in and do what you want.
Which I kind of want to emphasize that that's not a for the people who are thinking like I'm saying it's a bad thing. I don't think it is, because with different MMO teams, there's different theologies, and because the Monster Hunter team kind of runs off of this similar philosophy where they really don't like metagaming happening right off the bat. Blizzard doesn't care because Blizzard knows it's going to happen anyway, and they also do like openly talk to a lot of the world first raid teams to be able to basically use them as beta testers. So at that point they like that relationship that they can have. But even Monster Hunter like does kind of this drop last minute, and you don't really get early access to it, and a lot of the reasoning is because they don't want people to be metagaming or cookie cuttering things until like a month into the expansion, not like a month before it.
Yeah, like I feel like with WoW, when like the expansion launches, there will not be any surprises or like very few surprises. Well, with Final Fantasy 14, we know very little about DAWNTRAIL. Everything will be a surprise.
Yeah, and so at that point, they want everybody to be on like a level playing field, and so that to them that works. It's just a different philosophy ultimately is what's going on.
I don't think either is necessarily better, and there's definitely pros and cons of each. But like we're talking about the new classes in Final Fantasy, I have no idea how to play those, or I will not have any idea how to play those until DAWNTRAIL hits.
I think the only stuff we have on the Viper and the Pictomancer is what they have recorded internally. So at that point, it's primarily for pizzazz at this point.
Yeah, we know what the abilities will look like. We have no idea like how they'll play mechanically. Well, we'll talk about this later with like with the hero talents, we pretty much have a decent idea of saying, okay, here are options, here's how it'll affect our rotations. Wellhead could probably write a guide on the hero talents like right now, and it'd be like 80% of the way there.
Although I will say this, I'm looking at the Viper and the Pictomancer videos, and I'm getting a very Demon Hunter vibe from the Viper. I'm not gonna lie. There's just a lot of abilities where he's bouncing back and forth like the Demon Hunter does. So
yeah, I can see that now. I have it back up. So
yeah, the Pictomancer is more reliant. Like a lot of her mechanics are reminding me a lot of like a Dark Souls boss, not necessarily something I've seen in an MMO, and that might be for the best because this is a unique class. It's definitely going to be interesting to see it in dungeons and see what it actually provides.
Yeah, like a Viper, I feel like sort of standard swordsman class. Well, Pictomancer is like something I've never seen before.
Right.
And I know you said it was like from Final Fantasy VI, which I haven't played, but it's like not something I see have an equivalent in WoW. I could say like, oh, it's just like that.
Which apparently like Brinton hasn't notified me of this, but other people within my guild who have played 14 for a long time have. That's kind of FF14's motif, is that they like to provide what people are used to in established MMOs, but then they like to provide things that are unique. So, for example, I think it's called the Gunbreaker, right? That's a tanking class. And
Yeah.
even though it does have inspirations in the trooper tank from the Old Republic, it went in its own unique directions with it. And thus you could almost argue it's not the same as the trooper. And that's what it feels like with the Pictomancer, is they are letting it be its own thing.
And I feel like Final Fantasy does that with a lot of classes, like the ninja. I like how he uses his various like jutsu as magic attacks to augment his physical attacks, which is very different from like how WoW has like a rogue, which is like mostly physical with some like magic damage added on, but it's still like
people are going to murder me for this, but they haven't done anything original with the rogue in many years at this point.
Right, so. But like you think like they sound like similar classes in a way they are, but like Final Fantasy does something like very different with it.
I mean, War Within's coming. They could easily change my mind on it, but I mean, in a lot of cases, combat has always been kind of like a ninja-y build, and assassin is just basically a thief. In a lot of cases, like it's based more on like the D&D kind of structure of a thief than anything else. Subtlety is the one that could change it all, but I do like what they're ultimately doing. Brinton, I might work on a Viper. I like a lot of what it's doing. Pictomancer I'll probably mess around with too, but Viper looks really fun, so like that'll be an interesting off spec when I'm not doing dungeons to at least keep my time going.
So I will tell you right now on my main, I do plan on like leveling a Viper from 80 to 90 just to get a feel if that's something I would like to main. Because I do plan on, like, I've been tanking and healing in Final Fantasy 14 for a very, very long time.
Yes.
And I would like to take a break. So Viper also is on my radar. Yeah. Something also to keep in mind, Adam, because you haven't experienced this yet, since this is your first time going through like there's going to be a brand new expansion hype for this game. Right now, what you're looking at are just teaser videos for Viper and Pictomancer. Closer to the release of DAWNTRAIL, they will release a video, what's called a job action video.
Good.
Where they will show how every single job is played at the new max level, wearing like the gear, the artifact, the level 100 artifact gear that is reminiscent to the job. So that's when you get to see every single job, including these two new ones, for all their flashy glory, for lack of a better phrase.
No, and I like the fact that they're doing it. In fact, the fact that you brought this up, I believe this is Blizzard actually learning from Square Enix in this case, because with War Within and their hero talents, they're considering doing a similar thing. Like showing their own internal builds of dealing with the new hero build, the hero talent tree builds. So maybe they learned it from 14. That actually would be a cool thing, because then players who are looking at this can go, oh, okay, so this is how I'm going to look like or what I'm going to look like at end game, and whether or not I'm actually willing to commit to it. So I like that. We've talked a lot about the Viper. Are either of you guys going to play the Pictomancer?
I'll probably try it. I'm still like level 70 something, so I can't play it right away unless I play more Final Fantasy, which I'm not sure I am. We can get into that more of why for that later. The Pictomancer is the one that excites me of those two, though.
Yes. It looks interesting, but the fact that I haven't messed with casters in FF14 yet, it already, like, I have that apprehension, but it definitely is intriguing.
Yeah,
I would agree. It's intriguing. I like to have like a main for every single Like I like to have a tank and a healer and a melee and a ranged caster and a ranged DP, ranged physical. And I just like, I already have a main for a caster that is challenging and fun and interesting to me, that I don't really care all that much for Pictomancer. I think I think it looks fun. I can appreciate what it adds to the Final Fantasy 14 community. I just don't. I don't think I'm going to play it.
See, and I actually kind of follow the same kind of philosophy when it comes to characters and alts, especially when it comes to dungeon and raid content, is that I tend to, look at the makeup of what the classes are and say, okay, I like what this tank is doing. This is going to be the tank that I work with for the majority of the expansion. This is the healer I work with. And I haven't planned on that in 14 yet, but that's because I want to get the end game first. And I'd probably do the same thing, is that I'd pick a tank that I like the most, a healer I like the most, a ranged DPS or a caster DPS, and a melee DPS that I prefer. And if that's the Pictomancer, then great. If not, that's the way it goes.
Yeah, I think the magic DPS is like the one I don't like have a main for Final Fantasy yet. I like Summoner, but it's also lower level than my other higher level classes.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like I remember seeing the 11 Summoner, and that's kind of the problem. I don't think I'd ever play Summoner because I would want to be able to have those big ass Esper summons that you had in previous Final Fantasy games, and it doesn't make sense in terms of game balance. So I would just kind of get used to the fact that Summoner is just not the way I would go about it. I wouldn't like little mini versions that like happened in 11.
Yeah, I feel like Summoner just like has like a good flow between like you throw out your summon, it empowers your spells, you use that, then the next summon. So it's just like once I got to a higher level with it, it's like flows a lot better. So I like that. But
right.
yeah, I feel like it's hard to like balance Summoner like feel right in an MMO like that.
Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at the casters like right now. So they have Black Mage, they have Summoner, they have Red Mage, and they have Blue Mage. I can already tell you just based off of, my history with Final Fantasy and what I would want to mess around with, it would probably be either Black Mage or Red Mage, because I know what those are and I know where their power lies. So I'd probably just kind of go in that direction, but Pictomancer might be something fun to mess around with.
Yeah, well, Blue Mage is a limited job, so like you can't do dungeons and raids with it.
Well, and on top of that, this is one of those times where, once again, Brinton, people are going to be like, hand over your Final Fantasy card. I have never liked Blue Mages in Final Fantasy games because they are hit or miss. Either you get the insanely broken abilities, and thus you can have a Blue Mage literally carry you to the end of the game, or you can have a Blue Mage that has virtually nothing, and they become useless and nothing more than somebody who just sits in the airship kind of deal. So I've never felt really committed to a Blue Mage. I don't really see myself messing around with it that much.
Which is totally fine. Like Rising Sun said, you can't even take it into main content because it has its own niche sector of the game.
So I wouldn't even have to worry about it.
Yeah, and Beastmaster is going to fall into that same category. So it's not something that you can take into the main content of the game.
Which I have a feeling they did that intentionally because like I said, apparently in FF11, Beastmasters in FF11 could break a lot of stuff because of the fact that you had pets. And the pets could be, I believe the way they worked was they were equal level to you, so they were equal in power. Whereas like a hunter pet in WoW does not work the same way. It is significantly less in power. It provides buffs, but that's about it. So they probably made it a limited job because they really just didn't want people trying to break the game with it. And I'm totally on board with that. Don't do that.
It's the same reason why they did that to Blue Mage. So
right. So at that, and like I said, I just don't have the allure for Blue Mage that a lot of people do. I get it. They can. If you play a Blue Mage right, you can break the goddamn game, and sometimes that's fun, and sometimes it really isn't. So that's
honestly, Adam, based on like the two casters that you showed an interest in, I think that you would. I think Red Mage is a good place to start because Black Mage can be really, really tricky to play.
Mm-hmm.
I am one of the few who apparently can play Black Mage correctly.
All right.
So
well, I mean, as long as it doesn't have a Starfall button, then I would just wreck the dungeon. So
I mean,
I'm not trustworthy as a boomkin. I really am not.
Well, that button is called the limit break. So
there you go.
Those are fun.
They are, in fact.
Rage Mage is interesting. Like give your it's like a builder spender spec. Your builders are your magic spells, and then your spenders are melee attacks.
I like that actually. I like that.
So like you like do your range rotation, then you like have a charge, you leap in there, spend your resource on a bunch of melee attacks, and then hop back out.
That sounds a lot
go
like
back
sorcerers in previous games too, where you can have basically magic-based sword attacks, and all you do is kind of build
Right.
up, and then eventually get your big payoff. And yeah, that actually sounds kind of fun, honestly.
Yeah,
Black Mage is more a rotation of being aware of how much of your MP is being drained by big flashy fire attacks, and switching over to your ice abilities to regain MP, while weaving in your dot and a bunch of other unique abilities that are exclusive to Black Mage. And the part of the rotation that really, really trip people up are the abilities that you like use as finishers per se, before you completely drain yourself of mana, and that switching back and forth between ice and fire just really confused a lot of people. I don't know what clicked in my head. I'm apparently really, really, really good at maintaining it. Oh, and
now that you've explained it, do you want to know what it sounds like to me?
Tell me.
You weren't in Wrath of the Lich King, and neither of you were, but you guys could tell me whether or not Black Mage sounds like this. There was basically hunters were god tier. They are god tier in a lot of expansions, honestly. But in Wrath of the Lich King, they were god tier for one specific reason. This was around the days where hunters still had mana. They didn't have focus like they do now. That would be the next expansion that changed that. But what happened was that they had two primary aspects that they had to use, which is just like their hunter buff to be able to do god levels of DPS, which was Aspect of the Hawk. And then they would have Aspect of the Viper, which Viper would basically, for all of their shots, like Arcane Shot and stuff like that, they'd spend their mana. And Viper would allow for them to do their basic shot to be able to get that mana back. It's what a lot of us affectionately called the sprinkler build, because basically what would happen is once you had Aspect of the Hawk on, you were like a Gatling gun, just and going crazy. But then once you had Viper on, your damage would go so low that it would just be like going from a Gatling gun to basically like some auto targeting turret that fires every now and again. So kind of like how sprinklers work, where you'd be like, and so a lot of us called it affectionately the sprinkler build. That's what Black Mage sounds like to me, is that you have these god levels of fire magic, and then, I'm out of mana. Okay, now I'm throwing out these ice bolts to be able to get my mana.
Okay, yeah, that 100% sounds similar.
I was wondering.
Yeah, I
see, and I played that, and I actually liked it. So
okay, well then give Black Mage a try.
I would really definitely experiment in my spare time with it.
Yeah, I really like Black Mage. I always have. And sometimes I'll go back and forth between that and Red Mage, and then I remember like the changes they made to Red Mage with Endwalker. And like it still has like a bunch of flashy abilities.
Right.
Kind of like what Rising Sun said. You have your spells, you jump in, use up all your resources, jump out, and then you have like this 3 combo finisher following it. And I mean, like it's kind of fun. But Black Mage, there's something about the busyness of Black Mage that just really keeps me on my toes, really keeps me busy and focused. And I feel like I just get really bored playing Red Mage for some reason. Like Red Mage isn't busy enough for me.
Well,
so
and on top of that, like depending on the MMO you're playing, certain classes just work better for you on an individual basis. So it makes sense that like for some people Black Mage is an amazing thing, and for others it's too busy, it's too cumbersome to be able to pull off. So I totally get that. There's been plenty of times where warlocks are amazing and take very little effort in an expansion, and I love playing them. But then the next expansion, they made them too complex, and I don't want to mess with them. So instead, I go over to Boomkin again, or something to that extent. So I totally get that. Big question though. So given the features that are being provided here, where are you guys sitting? Is DAWNTRAIL going to be something that you're going to be wanting to play out? Like you're going to take time out of your busy week to play at launch, or are you just going to get to it when you can get to it, or ignore it completely?
I would love to play it at launch.
You will be busy recovering from surgery, probably.
That's the thing. Like I still plan on pre-ordering it, and I was gonna take just a couple of days off to engage in the early access.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, I would take a whole week
that
off
actually
from
was
work.
another question I had, is whether or not they did early access. Okay.
Yeah, it's like 3 days.
Oh,
3 days before the expansion. I've done it. I've taken a week off from work for Stormblood, Shadowbringers, Endwalker. I have a job where taking off a week of work makes people freak out. So I just decided maybe I'll just take off a Friday and a Monday or something. But I'm gonna be destroying and completely eliminating my sick and PTO leave for this tonsillectomy recovery. So I will not, I would, depending on when it comes out, I would really, really, really like to engage with it day one. It's very likely that I will not.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows?
Okay.
Who really knows?
What about you, Rising Sun?
So I am kind of interested, but that would require me to finish the rest of Shadowbringers and play Endwalker.
There you go.
And when I was last playing through Shadowbringers, I got mad at it and decided to drop the game and haven't played it since then. So
I would ask where you got mad. However, if it's a spoiler, don't answer my question.
So it was like the zone with like the fairies who are like trolling you the whole time.
Oh my god!
And so
something tells me this is not a singular thing. The way that Brinton responded is like this is something people complained about.
So it's not just the fairies. So like I was really interested in Shadowbringers. I was starting to stream it and everything. Thought like this would be a good game to play along with people. And the first couple of zones were good.
Okay.
But as I was playing it, I saw like more of the negatives of Shadowbringers, like really like Final Fantasy 14 as a whole, like slowing it down.
Right.
And that was like how slow the dungeons are. And so the part that really like annoyed me was I was like going through the fairy part. We were doing, I think it was like the underwater people, and like a dungeon popped up saying you go do this dungeon now. And it just felt really bad because like it had been really slow paced so far.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like all the like cutscenes were like really drawn out. I was like, you did not need to take this much time to like tell the story you need to tell.
Right. And so it sounds like a similar situation that I had with Onaran Plains and Dragonflight, where I felt like that zone dragged on forever.
Yeah.
So sorry to break your like box, Rising Sun. That's just the nature of Shadowbringers, because there is let's just say there is a huge dump of lore between where you are and the end of Endwalker. So there are going to be really long, drawn out pieces of cutscenes, but they're all very pertinent to understanding what's going on. So completely understand and would agree that there is a slowness. However, it gets really, really good. You just got to get past the zone you're in, and it gets really, really good.
Yeah, and so like I don't mind like the cutscenes that are like have a lot of lore in them. That is interesting. And like there is the zone with Alphinaut, I forget the name of it, and it might be a spoiler, so it's probably good that I don't. But how you like met up with him, explored like that town. Like I played for 2 hours without any combat at all, but the story was really interesting. Like you're going around, you're talking to the people, you were learning about how the world you were in worked, and I thought like that was very thematically and symbolically interesting. So, like that was slow, but I was fine with it. But now we got like what felt like a filler area, and then like needing to spend even more time to like either queue for a dungeon and like wait in the queue, or running with the AI. When I ran the previous dungeon with an AI, it felt like they were really slow. So it's like I'm in a part I'm not enjoying. They're saying this is going to take even longer. So at that point, I was like, I'm done. I'm not interested anymore.
Like one of the issues that might exist with Shadowbringers, and maybe not just to you, is probably some of the issues that some Final Fantasy fans have with Ivalice as itself as a lore concept. Because when you look into the storylines and the world building and lore that goes into a lot of the worlds of Final Fantasy, the one that is the most deep and complex is Ivalice, and it's primarily because it was not Sakaguchi who made it, it was Matsuno. And Matsuno, who, for those who don't know, made Tactics Ogre before Final Fantasy Tactics, and really wanted those complex, slow to build kind of stories because he liked those, much like how Tetsuya Takahashi loved those and thus created Xenogears in that image. So it sounds to me like you would have the same issues that a lot of people who can't get into Ivalice, any of the Ivalice games, would have, because to them it's too slow, it takes too long, it's way too dense to be able to keep track of, and thus I've even seen a lot of people compare Ivalice lore to the Elder Scrolls, because it feels like you do actually have to read the books and the side content to be able to truly understand it. And I get where they're coming from. I will, however, I'll side with Brinton a little bit too, because once you get kind of past those dense areas, it does pay off in the long run.
Yeah,
I would say once you, and I know this is going to sound awful because I know what level you're at. From level 80, no wait, level 80 was the cap for
I'm like
75.
at level. Okay, yeah, I'm
Sorry,
at like level 73, I think.
Yeah, you're at 73. Once you get from 75 onward, things get really, really, really good.
Okay.
So I know I literally just told you, hey, you're 2 levels behind where it starts to get better.
This actually would be an interesting discussion, is like eventually we're going to go through Shadowbringers, and then just to have everybody kind of sit down and go over whether or not, I mean, we've already talked about doing this with like Realm Reborn and Heaven's Word and all that, but it sounds to me like that is a discussion to look forward to, is sitting down and having all three of us kind of talk about what made Shadowbringers good, what made it bad.
Okay, so I'll tell you this much. When I'm ready for a break from WoW, I'll give Final Fantasy another try and like take notes on it, and we can like talk about Shadowbringers in particular later.
Right.
Because I was like really excited for it. Like I heard it was really good. There's like a lot of good setup to the Shadowbringers like story.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it's not just like Shadowbringers I have the issue with, but a lot of Japanese storytelling in general.
And that's kind of the problem. Ivalice, Matsuno loves Japanese type storytelling.
Yeah, like I'm a big fan of the Danganronpa games, but I feel the same way. Like at the start of every game, they like have all this dialogue where it's like, why are you saying this? This isn't like interesting or relevant. Like get to the point.
Right.
But then by the end of it, I'm like, I love this game. I love these characters.
I mean, I've made this complaint to Brinton, not on a podcast, but guys, Xenogears is one of my favorite games of all time. Does it have problems? Oh, fuck yes, it does. And one of the things that I would say is a big problem for it is that its first 2 to 3 hours are hard to get through. But once you get there, then it starts building properly and it starts getting better. But that's the thing. Again, we're talking about Takahashi and Matsuno, who like that traditional Japanese storytelling kind of slate. And so at that point, that's what they want to do. And so you just kind of have to you have to decide whether or not you're willing to kind of stick it in for the long haul.
Yeah, and hopefully it will be like worthwhile and I could give it another try.
Right.
I just want to be in a situation where like I'm playing for like 2 or 3 hours and I feel like I've done nothing or like made no progress with the story.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, so at that point, there really isn't a whole lot left to go over with DAWNTRAIL, because the only thing that we have left is release date speculation, which I'm just going to go ahead and tell you the only reference that we've gotten to it is summer of 2024. Now, I have since heard at other interviews and events Yoshida, I believe, is the game director, right, Brinton? Yoshida is?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, there was like a loud bang outside of her office, and I have no idea what it was. But
So
I'm gonna text my husband.
Fair
so
enough.
Yoshida has inferred that right now what they are looking at is an early summer 2024 release date. So at that point, we're probably looking at, I believe, let's see, I'm trying to do the quarters in my head. So we're probably looking at early June or maybe even July. But they really want to, he hasn't said this directly, but I know that Square Enix wants to avoid this. They have 2 months at that point before, presumably, when War Within is going to come out, and they do not want to compete at that point, which is a good idea, because in my opinion, it is not a good idea for MMOs to compete in the slightest. It's actually a good idea for MMO players to just let them have their breaks. So at that point, do we think that is that acceptable for, like, is that the right time for them to do it, around June, for them to finally release DAWNTRAIL? Do you think it should be earlier, later? Where are you sitting with that?
So I have a theory that is completely unfounded.
All right. I like those, especially with MMOs.
So, Brenton, what day of the week do their expansions normally come out?
Let me actually.
They don't adhere to just the Tuesday guideline like everybody does. Everybody except Nintendo. Nintendo likes Friday, which we love for Nintendo for.
So Endwalker came out on December 3rd, 2021, which was on a. Sorry, I'm going to a calendar. Friday.
Okay.
All right.
So I predict that DAWNTRAIL will come out on September 6th.
Okay.
And my reason for that is that I possibly have a work trip scheduled then, and it's always my luck that I'm out of town when like the new update comes.
You have the same luck my brother does, because it's not for every WoW expansion, but for, I think it was Shadowlands, where he was really excited to get into it. He, out of nowhere, his scheduled a conference or something like that in New Orleans, and he was like, just dropping F-bombs internally because he really wanted to take that time off.
So I actually had the opposite experience with Shadowlands. So like the Sunday before, my boss called me and said, like, yeah, there's been a lot of COVID going around our building. We're just going to close our building next week, so you don't have to come in and do whatever from home if you can, but don't worry about it. And so I was like, oh, I have time for Shadowlands, and I ended up not liking the expansion. So I'll take being out of town for when it comes out, and then I'll be happy with the expansion, hopefully.
All right. Well, I mean, look, it happens, people. Like, sometimes release dates just happen, and you find out that you have to go out of town or something like that, or you have a con that you have to go take care of. So,
that's the other possibility.
If it does happen on September 6th, I'm going to be sending you a message and just laughing the whole time. We'll share a laugh about it. Brinton, what about you?
I would imagine that it will come out either like late May or early June. That would make sense.
That kind of makes sense to me too.
However, I know that Yoshida was very embarrassed that they had to delay Endwalker by a week, so I could see him being a little paranoid and maybe releasing it in July.
maybe.
However, but pre-COVID, because a new expansion would come out every 2 years, like June was typically when it came out, so I could see them trying to get back onto that same kind of a schedule as well.
All right. I technically am where you're at. I think mid to late May is the earliest in the window, and then July I think would be way too late at that given moment, because then they would have to worry about competing with WoW, and I really don't think that Square Enix wants to do that. I think that they know they want to have as much time, and in all honesty, a 2-month window would be ideal, because then people could get through the end game, mess around with it in plenty of time. Right as they're kind of getting bored would be probably when the pre-patch for War Within would happen. And so you can basically immediately resolve that boredom by going into something brand new.
That would also be like the best time to come out too, because people will be tired with Dragonlance. It'll be like the end of season 4, if people even care about season 4, they'll be done with that.
I love
So
that you said
perfect time-
Dragonlance, and the first thing that came to my mind was Dragonlance, the D&D franchise. So
This is why I shouldn't talk about 2 MMOs in one night.
Right,
especially
right.
when I have not had enough sleep this week.
right.
Yeah, so when I was saying like the end of Dragonlance, that's like or Dragonflight, that's a perfect time to like have a Final Fantasy expansion because people are tired with WoW, they probably want an MMO. Go play Final Fantasy for a couple months, and then you can be like wrapped up with that,
Exactly.
and then go back to WoW. So
I agree with that. Like I have things in season 4 of Dragonflight that I am interested in, but in all honesty, I could totally understand people taking a break to go to Final Fantasy at that point because they want something new to do to break up the monotony of their everyday kind of grind, and then at that point they can come back to WoW and feel refreshed. That being said, that is pretty much all we have for DAWNTRAIL, but that is not the end because if people don't remember, we have a new WoW expansion coming out, and we've been talking about, obviously, with the War Within. And there has been quite a number of announcements that have happened since last we were able to speak to one another. First of all, that we need to go into, obviously, is now going to become, I think, a more active tradition for Blizzard in the fact that they are going to be releasing roadmaps, which are going to basically say, here's where our content are going to be coming out around this time, so you can look forward to this. And frankly, I love this idea because then at that point, there isn't long periods of silence with the developers that immediately dishearten players and make them not want to be invested. So at that point, the developers can feel like they're a lot more actively out there for people and that content is steadily coming in. Because unlike these guys, I still remember times like the dark times, which would be the gap between Wrath of the Lich King officially ending its content and Cataclysm's content officially starting. And contrary to what a lot of people believe, Wrath of the Lich King's last raid is not the Lich King. There actually was the Ruby Sanctum, and unfortunately, we had the Ruby Sanctum for far, far too long. But let's just quickly kind of go over the roadmap that we have so far. Some of this has already started to come out, but we already have had, for example, we've already had 10.2.5, which is the Seeds of Renewal, which included the Dragon Isles epilogue quests, along with the storyline quest, which is the Reclamation of Gilneas. A lot of Gilnean fans have since been very satisfied with how things have gone. I have not seen it, and I really do want to see it because I do love Gen Greymane as a character, and especially what they did with the Worgen starting zone in Gilneas. Dragon riding has been unlocked worldwide, so now you have dynamic flight that you can use everywhere, which everybody has enjoyed. If you've been able to play WoW recently, Brinton or Rising Sun, I'm sure you love the fact that you maybe you didn't rely on flight pass that much. I still kind of do, but it is kind of nice to be able to go across the continent if you know that flight paths aren't going to put you where you want to go that quickly. The big announcement of 10.2.5, however, was the follower dungeons, which is basically allowing you to run the Dragonflight dungeons in normal difficulty solo, or rather not normal difficulty. A lot of people are starting to call it leveling difficulty, which is, I think it's apt, honestly, because normal difficulty does explain it, but these are the leveling dungeons that specifically can do it, and it basically allows for you to have 4 AI companions that will fill in the roles that you can't fill. And I know for a fact, Brinton, you tried it. What was your take on follower dungeons? And Rising Sun, if you have, feel free to give your thoughts too.
Or
did you not get around to it?
I don't think I've gotten to that quite yet.
I know I'm going to be messing around with it when it comes to the questing with Drak, and I start to do those dungeons for their story content, but I haven't messed around with them just yet. I've seen them at work, and it doesn't seem to me like they have issues. The AI doesn't make stupid decisions or anything like that, but I can't say that for certain.
Yeah, I haven't played it myself. For my use case, I didn't really see a need to do it or a need for them, but I understand why they could be good. Like if someone's like completely new to WoW or just like wants to try out something in like a low risk scenario,
right,
while still doing the dungeon, like it's good for them. In my case, I'm just like, okay, I'll just queue for a random hurdle, jump in, figure it out, and I'll be fine.
See, that's kind of my viewpoint too, is like the only reason that I like the follower dungeons as a concept, because I haven't seen their execution, is simply because, you know, you do get those dungeon quests, and those dungeon quests can actually offer really good rewards, especially for like tanking and healing classes, but you kind of don't want to go through the hassle of having to deal with the elite players coming in and telling you how much you suck. And so at that point, it gives you an entry level, if you're brand spanking new, to be able to experience the dungeons and see whether or not this is content you're going to care about. And thus, I think it's actually a good thing there, because you can just follow the story, you can get your upgrade, and then you can make the decision later, well, I did like those dungeons, maybe I will mess around with being a healer priest or whatever. Then we also have the unlocking of the Azerothian archives, which is basically, a lot of people are making the joke that this is the replacement for archaeology. It's not entirely wrong. It does offer in currencies and things like that, but I don't think it's like a 100% or a 1-to-1 replacement of archaeology. I just think it's a better idea that was put into it. And obviously we did also get the Hearthstone anniversary event, which just recently launched. In case people don't know, Hearthstone's been around for 10 years. This
is making me feel old.
Right. Hearthstone's been around for 2 years. It's, you know, the card game's making us feel old. Everything makes me feel old these days. The one that threw everybody off, and unfortunately we will not be getting too much information until next week about it, although you did actually find some information. Let me see if I can bring that up as well to see what it provides. 10.2.6. The only thing that came up on the roadmap for it was a pirate flag, which doesn't really tell us a whole lot. But according to what Rising Sun was able to provide, it does seem on March 19th, 10.2.6 is going to be going live with a bold new limited time event. Given the pirate flag, I'm guessing it's going to be pirate related. You won't miss out on the fun. It will go live for several weeks after the release of 10.2.6, and for heroes working towards the Amir Drasil Feats of Strength, you'll need to obtain ahead of the curve before Season 4 begins, and Season 4 will be after this initial patch, so keep that in mind. But to me, it just sounds to me, it's going to be like a revised Pirate Day or something like that. It's going to be like a piratey event that now we can engage in.
Yeah, it looks like it'll be like some event. It's not, I think it'll be more than a day, but it'll just be like something different to do for a few weeks, probably.
Oh, I'm just saying Pirate Day is like, you know, it was the micro holiday first. This will basically replace it.
Okay, yeah.
So
I don't know if it'll be like recurring like a holiday, but yeah, something new. We know basically nothing about it, which there is a post a while back. I didn't have a chance to find it again, where they basically said they wanted to do something where the players did not know what was coming. Like we talked earlier, how like before, or tradition with, well, you know, everything is coming, no surprises are very few. Well, Final Fantasy, you know nothing. Right. So this time they're trying to do this patch like Final Fantasy, and they're going to like do everything internal testing and then just release it, let everyone discover it together.
Which I don't necessarily have a problem with if they want to experiment with that. Because, yeah. I mean, it's Blizzard. They should be able to internally test this.
Yeah, it's not like this is something pretty small, so if like something is wrong, it's not like it's messing up the raid the first week.
I mean, we're already assuming at this point, because of some of the unveils for War Within, that they are internally testing War Within. And so at that point, you know, even though we know an alpha is coming, we know that there's probably a dev alpha as well.
Oh,
and
definitely.
So they've been messing around with that. And speaking of, in early spring, that is when we are going to get the War Within alpha. Now, for the people who did pre-order the collector's edition of War Within, I don't believe this is the one you're going to be able to get into. I think it's still the beta, right?
I think
it's access to the War Within beta. So this is still going to be for like some content creators, as well as diehard WoW players who can come in and test what they've done with War Within so far and be able to kind of give their thoughts on it. But that will be happening in early spring. I think the internal date that they're looking at is like early to mid-April is when they want to start it.
Yeah, I checked the page for War Within. Yes, it's only the beta with the collector's edition or whatever edition that is.
Right.
Which, yeah, alpha is typically like very small, probably some content creators, so like they can help start advertising it, building hype.
Right.
But mainly it's like make sure like nothing is severely broken as they start adding more features, and then having beta, which is more open, in
which
a couple more months.
is kind of how that's working now. Is like that's when they have people like the lore based content creators like Novel and Taliesin and Evatel in there to kind of start covering the stories that they're trying to tell within it. And then they also have people in like, I think Asmongold is still one of those people that kind of goes in and tests mechanics and whatnot. So people can look forward to that. I know, thankfully it sounds like Mike Preach Lamb is going to be in there too, of Preach Gaming, if people don't know him.
Yeah, he's probably one of my favorite content creators.
I love that man. I love him so much, especially the most recent thing he put up was the Legacy of Dungeons, and then I can't remember the other one recent that he put up, but I love Preach so much so that I send videos of him to my brother and to Brinton. Just like, go watch this guy. He's great.
Yeah, like I don't watch everything he does, but I definitely enjoy it when I do, and I just love his like passion for it all.
Although I will say this, if Blizzard officially decided to let him cover World First stuff, I would have no problem with that because he does have the experience and he can appeal to casual players a lot better than a lot of the method players. I think that would be actually a worthwhile investment. In fact, have him shoutcast the Mythic Dungeon Internationals and the Arena World Cups because he's got pizzazz. Dratnos doesn't. Sorry. I have to be that guy. But yeah, so early spring, we're looking at the War Within Alpha. In spring, Dragonflight Season 4 will launch, and I was officially confirmed as this is going to be Dragonflight Raids Revisited. So this is going to be Legacy Raids, or Faded Raids as they were in Shadowlands. This is going to be the system where you have a weekly raid that you can go to, that you're going to get a currency, where you can optimize your characters the way that you want to, and be able to get like that trinket that you've been farming in Amir Drasil for months. This is going to be the expansion that lets you do all of that. Plus, we are going to get a new Mythic Plus season, which they haven't officially confirmed this, but I think it's pretty much going to happen. We are going to get nothing but Dragonflight dungeons for it. This is going to be the Dragonflight Greatest Hits patch. We're going to put all of the dungeons together, let you have your final stint in the Dragon Isles before you get ready to go into War Within content. The new PvP season will also start, and we will also be getting new open world rewards. And I believe they've also said that they are going to update some of the open raid boss, or like the world boss content is going to be updated in item level to be able to reflect kind of the current norm. So I'm very happy about all of that. I don't know if that's enough though to bring you guys back to Dragonflight Season 4, but I'm at least looking at it for being able to optimize characters to go do more transmog content because I'm a transmog whore.
I mean, does it? Yes, right away. Probably not.
Yeah. No, I get it, and that's totally fine. Like, this is not supposed to cater to everybody, and even like I have interest in Dragonflight Season 4, but am I going to drop going and doing something with Brinton and Final Fantasy 14? No, I'm not going to. Am I going to be like a hardcore Mythic Plus or a hardcore Raider in it? Absolutely not. I will be doing it to optimize simply because I want to go and get transmog gear, especially I'm hoping that they are able to do this in Season 4, but that will be when we can finally have everybody be able to grab every piece of gear. And so at that point, I could finally not have bad luck on plate drops on a plate character. But I could totally get where some people would have problems with it. After that, we would get patch 10.2.7, which is officially being called Dark Heart, but we don't know why. And I've also confirmed that these Harbinger quests that they're referring to will officially wrap up the Dragonflight storyline. So even though they said that the Dragon Isles epilogues were in 10.2.5, we will get additional content that wraps up Dragonflight and moves into War Within for that. So for all the people that are wondering if we were going to do a video on wrapping up the story of Dragonflight, if we do, I'm officially waiting until these come out, because that is going to be a good thing to do because you have to set up the next expansion.
Yeah, that feels like I don't see a really good connection between like Dragonflight and War Within, like story wise. So that'll probably be like what links them together. Possibly Xalatath, and who was that?
Because she's supposed to be the Harbinger. So at that point,
like
it works.
She's a Harbinger, so that would make sense. Maybe bringing Iridicron, I think that's that guy's name.
Yes.
So like having him starting to work with her to like link those two stories up.
Now, granted, we did have an additional Iridicron story put into the Dragon Isles epilogue, but it was basically kind of taking the trio of the Primalist dragons and separating them, where basically Iridicron and I can't remember her name, the ice dragon.
V something, Viranoth.
Viranoth. They
okay.
basically severed ties, roughly. And so at that, but we all kind of knew that was going to happen. And Fyrax's dead, so we don't, that already ended. The thing that's confusing about 1027 is time running pandemonium. I'm not kidding. It's literally spelled pandemonium. And I'm guessing it's going to be a time walking event, but the fact that they're saying time running makes me think there's more to it than that. But we have no idea what they mean in this regard. Any speculation what they could mean?
Yes, wild speculation. They're bringing back challenge modes from Pandaria, and and so it'll be like, can you like get the top times in those? And maybe rewards. Maybe they'll bring back the armor sets for that if you can do it this time. I
think they'd have to at that point.
Yeah,
people really want those.
Yeah, and so that'd be a good way to like bring them back as like a limited time event. You can also like that gives you a reason to like want to gear up your character. Though if it's challenge modes, you might be item level scaled down. So I don't know how that would work.
That would be interesting to me. I really do like a lot of those designs.
Yeah, like challenge modes were like they were such a new idea then. They turned the dungeons into what felt like a raid boss, which was great.
Not only but mount collectors I think will be invested because I think the Phoenix mounts that were awarded from it haven't been awarded since. So that's like 4 Phoenix mounts that you could get that could go towards your mount collection. Easily.
Yeah, and because I've been playing my Paladin lately, and I did the challenge modes with him like way back then. Mm-hmm. So I used the challenge mode armor for my transmog.
Yeah, to bring Brinton up to speed, because he literally started in Legion, challenge modes are like the earliest concept of Mythic Plus, where they basically made it so that you had to run these dungeons at the highest difficulty, but you had to complete them within a certain time frame, and you would have a bronze, a silver, a gold, and I think there was even a diamond ranking for it. And
it's just up to gold. Yeah, and the other thing is like
just up to gold. But you had to get up to gold rank, and then if you did, you would get currency that then you could buy really cool armor sets that were class specific that actually had legit moving parts to them. And keep in mind, you came into Legion where there were mythic mythic raid sets that did have moving pieces to the armor. This was the first time that was ever done in WoW. And a lot of those class sets are fucking amazing.
And also like item levels, I scale down like this side. Okay, item level 200. We're gonna like scale everyone down to that. So you cannot like outgear these.
No, you basically had to min max everything. And the best way to be able to look at it is they wanted to try and put everybody on a level playing field, and this was pre-time walking, so they hadn't even figured that stuff out yet. But they wanted to put everybody on an even playing field, and so they kind of approached it like they did with their arena tournaments at the time, and they just put everybody on that level playing field where you were all optimized and you could go and do these. But they were amazing. I didn't even get past like the bronze rank because I couldn't get enough people interested in doing them around the time that I wanted to do them. And it's kind of sad, but I loved a lot of the sets. I'm going to see if I can try and bring them up too for Brinton to see.
Yeah, I would be super interested in participating in that.
That actually would be amazing if that's what it is. Then absolutely, let's do it. And actually, let me share my screen really quick, and I will show you what they looked like. Now, unfortunately, these are still images, but this will give you kind of a sense of what these sets looked like. And they've never been done again, for the record. They've never been introduced in different ways. Not even the Warlock set The only way it got introduced was that Terran Gore wore the same armor set, but you couldn't get it in WoD any other way. So
Yeah,
like,
keep in
Go
mind,
ahead,
it's
sir.
just I was just say like this is complete wild speculation. This probably won't be it, but yeah, that's just my idea, which would be really cool if they did something like this.
Oh, that would be amazing if they did it. I don't know. I kind of hope that you're right in this regard. And it would be cool if later on they did a time running of Warlords of Draenor, because Draenor did a similar thing with challenge modes, except it wasn't armor sets, it was weapons that could do it.
And I never did those, so I would love another chance to go
those
for those
weapons
weapons.
looked amazing. They were great. I would love to be able to have those images, honestly, as a transmog whore, because that's what I am. The only complaint that I have with the sets is the rogue one should really be the monk one. I'm just gonna say it, but
yeah.
I mean, these are still pretty good looking sets. I even remember when Tier 14 launched, I was so disappointed because I saw the challenge mode sets first and thought they were the raid sets. And I'm like, oh yeah, these look really, really good. And then I saw the Tier 14. I'm like, oh, my druid will have a giant bear schnoz for a helmet. That's great. I want the challenge set now. And what made it even worse is when in WoD, when I started raiding with a different raid guild, their druid, their balanced druid had the challenge armor set. And,
nice.
And intentionally wore it at raids because he knew it pissed me off. So shout out to that guy. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but even I kind of giggled at him like, oh, you motherfuckers. You keep on bringing this up to me. But yeah, so that's possibly what that could be. And I really hope you're right in that regard, Rising Sun. Moving on into the next set of announcements that we actually have for it. Not only will we have the time running, we will have the Harbinger quests, but also this will be where we get the Troll and Draenei Heritage Armor, which, for the record, like, we didn't mention this in our Dragonflight podcast, but they've been really good on the Heritage Armor sets this expansion, because I think we're now up to 3 that were released, because we had Human and Orc early on, and I think they also did Night Elf and Undead for Seeds of Renewal, and now we're also going to get Troll and Draenei Heritage Armor sets. So that's consistent for them. I'm going to give them major props in that regard.
Yeah, something I hope, like, even after they've gone through like all the races, that they keep doing like these specific stories to like push forward the story of that race.
I think they should, yeah.
Yeah, because all I feel like they're typically like pushed to the back burner for most of the time, but when they focus on those, they can be really interesting, even if they don't tie directly like into the main story.
Right. Well, I mean, we also do have Worgen Heritage Armor now, and it's not tied to the Gilneas Reclaimed storyline, so I agree with you, but I think where they're trying to go with it is, now that they've updated everybody into how these races work, now they can start telling like actual world stories with them. But I agree with you, like, it would be nice if, like, another 10 years down the road, they don't necessarily need to do a new set of Heritage Armor, but try to do another kind of heritage-based quest to explain like who the Blood Elves are and why we should care even after post World Soul Saga kind of thing.
Oh yeah, or like who they are has changed because of the World Soul Saga.
Right, because we know that at least one of those expansions, we're going back to Quel'Thalas, so we're going to get a bunch of Blood Elf, Night Elf, Elven lore. So you might as well just do something new to explain, like, this is where we're at now. They also say that we're going to be getting a new revised holiday event. I believe they've officially said it's going to be either Midsummer Fire Festival is going to get revamped, or it's going to be Children's Week, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
I know the Fire Festival is like 4th of July or around then.
Yeah.
So that would fit like spring into summer.
But that would go into their plan overall. Like when they revamped Noble Garden, we were hearing about that early or late December, early January, and then we got the revamped Noble Garden. So that's my guess, is that if 1027 is coming out around that time, the next major event there would probably be Midsummer Fire Festival. Maybe. It could easily be something else, but I don't know. In the early summer, this is where Collector's Edition players can rejoice, because the War Within beta will be available. So for all those content creators who didn't get in the alpha, you will now be able to get in the beta and be able to mess around with the hero talents and the delves and all of that stuff, which probably is going to be needed to be more tested in that regard. In the summer, we will get patch 11.1. So right now, the speculation, it's going to be right at June when we get the War Within pre-patch, which is going to include the world events that will be kind of setting things up for us going to the new continent, or new island, as it were. It will be officially where war bands will become a thing. So if you didn't like the concept of war bands, they will now be official in World of Warcraft from there on in. Dynamic flight obviously will now incorporate, because you can do dragon riding, but you can only do it on the dragon riding mounts. Dynamic flight will be where we can bring out the Phoenix mount and Invincible and all that, and be able to do dynamic flight with that. Although they haven't confirmed if, much like the Storm Griffin, where you get unique abilities with it, if every mount is going to get those. My guess is probably not. They're going to generalize them to an extent, because the mount database here is huge. We're talking at least 1,000 mounts at this point. I want to say at least 1,000 mounts, but I might be wrong.
That many. Didn't think it was that many, but I could believe it's close to that.
I don't know what the recent achievement was. It has to be like 750 to 1,000 mounts at this point.
No, I was thinking it was like 500, but I could be wrong.
You could be right, though, because I've lost track. Also, there will be updates to guilds that are going to be going through, and I'm not remembering all of them off the top of my head, but a lot of them are like guild perk updates and things like that. So you can look forward to that in the summer. Then, supposedly, the launch window for War Within is looking to be either August or September, which is going to be really funny if FF14 launches on September 6th, and then all of a sudden a week later War Within launches for Rising Sun.
Okay. It will probably be, now that I think about that, it'll probably be WoW that launches on September 6th.
There you go.
And then I'll be out of the town or country, or we'll see where I'm going then.
There you go. And with that, obviously, you get the campaign story that comes with it. Delves will be unlocked. Hero talents will be available. Earthen allied race will be available, except if you have early access. The 4 new zones, the 8 new dungeons, the new raid, the new PvP season, all of that stuff. And finally, things will wrap up on this roadmap for autumn, which is patch 11.05, which is going to be the first content update, which will include stories and quests, or new story, new quests, new content system updates, and also when we will find out about the official 20th anniversary event for World of Warcraft.
Yeah, so if we assume that 11.05 will come out like in November, which I think would make sense.
Yes.
With the cadence we've had for the Dragonflight patches, there's around 8 weeks between like each patch. So that would place the War Within to come out in September.
August, September, yeah, something like that. So, yeah. I mean, do we feel good about that launch window for War Within at that point? Because ideally, like me and Brinton are saying it's probably going to be mid to late May, early June when that comes out. And then what we're basically saying is 2 to 3 months later, you have War Within. Which to me, that's ideal for MMO fans, because then you're not bored.
Yeah, I don't think the pre-patch. Oh, you mean DAWNTRAIL will be like May or June?
Yeah, when the official expansion launches. If there's pre-content, it'll obviously be earlier than that.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Like June to September, that's 3 months. That's like plenty of time to really sink your teeth into DAWNTRAIL, be ready for something new, and then you can play War Within.
Right. Brinton, how are you feeling about that? Like, is that going to be enough of a window that you think that for yourself you could bounce between the two of them and not feel like you had any sense of boredom with it?
I would say yes. It's just all going to be happening at the start of another semester. So right, I mean,
right. So you have other things
fuck
to consider.
Me.
Well, I mean, you were already kind of saying like my poor wallet because of all the good games that were coming at the beginning of the year anyway. So it's like the gaming industry doesn't like Brinton, Rising Sun. You might find that out. It probably doesn't like you either, but that's just because of all the various releases that are happening around the same time.
No, I think the bigger constraint for me is like time, like working so much this past week, going on this trip. Like I brought my laptop with me, but that's like not a good gaming laptop.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I got back to my hotel room, I was like too tired to want to like do anything that required thought.
Exactly. So
So,
it's just one of those things where I would love to be able to have the time. Oh wait, I don't have the time.
yeah, I kind of started a new job last year, and now I have like more PTO, so I'm definitely going to take advantage of that and hopefully do more fun things.
Here's hoping you don't have the same problem that my brother's work does, where it's like a bunch of programmers, and unfortunately, because they all talk about the fact that this new MMO is coming out, the management hears and they go, "Yeah, we're not going to let you guys take PTO within this given week. Sorry."
Oh, I have a coworker who like he's like into RuneScape or something along those lines. So like, he'll take like a long weekend just to, like play that when it comes out. And I think I'm the only person who knows why he takes that time off.
Yeah. Oh, and you work with him, so at that point you just kind of keep to yourself.
Yeah, like we talk about MMO stuff.
See, that's a good boy right there.
Yeah, I'm like, he's like, yeah, I'm going to be off this Friday. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, whatever,
Rising Sun's
enjoy.
friend, that's a good boy right there. Don't lose that as a friend, okay?
Yeah, and then he mentions something later. It's like, oh, that's why you wanted that day off. I understand.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it totally makes sense. I mean, if I was my brother's boss, I know exactly that he's looking forward to it, and I would totally let him have it, kind of thing.
Yeah, like
you don't get good moments like that for much longer in your life, right?
Exactly. Like we don't have the same boss because my job is weird, but like his boss doesn't care. It's like, yeah, go enjoy your PTO. Go do whatever you want to do.
Nice. I like that. So that's the roadmap for it, and we do appreciate the consistency. But during this time, we have also had the reveal of the hero talents. But first, before we get into those, because I completely forgot, we did have a recent update that happened this week that I kind of want to get you guys' viewpoints on, which is in regards to WoW Season 4, because we are now looking at a change that's going to be coming to dungeon content in Season 4, basically changing around the difficulties and the item level and of rewards that comes to various degrees of difficulty in dungeons. Because right now, WoW has a bit of a problem where normal and heroic level dungeons, there really isn't much difference between the two of them. They're both fairly easy, and in some cases, I know of a few people that do this, they don't even hit heroic difficulty unless there's a quest attached to it. They go from normal right up into mythic because they just don't even mess around with heroic. There's no point in doing it. And the level of progression that heroic provides just doesn't change things too much. But in Season 4, they want to make it matter a little bit more compared to how it has in Season 3. So let me explain it really quick. What they're basically going to try and do is normal is going to remain unchanged. They like where normal is, and I think also because they have the follower dungeons attached to normal, they don't really want to mess with it. However, heroic, they're going to be tuning rewards and difficulty for it to basically be where heroic is now. In Season 4, it is going to be as difficult and rewarding as Mythic 0 itself is in Season 3. So basically where Mythic 0 is now will be what heroic is in Season 4. And from there on, Mythic plus 2 will be the equivalent of Mythic plus 5 in Season 3 right now, and it will then scale forward from there. So plus 3 will be like a plus 6, and plus 4 will be a plus 7, and so on and so forth. And basically it'll be a great way to be able to increase the amount of gear and rewards that players are getting, and make it a little bit more rewarding and feel like a much more steady climb in the Keystone dungeons. That way you're not feeling like you're losing out because you're doing heroic. And personally, I don't mind this. They did also say that heroic is going to be remaining queuable. So it's not going to be like Mythic 0, where you do still have to go to the dungeon. It's still going to be queuable, but it's just going to be more difficult and give better rewards. To you guys, is this a good idea for people, or is it a bad idea?
So one quick clarification there. The new Mythic 0 will be equivalent to the current Mythic 10, and then it'll scale up from there.
Yes. Yeah.
So you said Mythic 5.
Yeah, they're a little vague on how they explain this, but they wanted the Mythic Plus system to go up in level. And there's a point in the notes where they say like 2 will be the equivalent of 5. But yeah, you're right. It's Mythic 0 will be the equivalent of plus 10 right off the bat, and then it will scale up accordingly.
Yeah, and there's a little bit hand wavy, but that's our overall goal.
But it's also going to be going hand in hand in regards to the way that they're doing the keystones now, because in case Brinton doesn't know this, they're not really doing seasonal keystones anymore. So at that point, you basically go from the basic one, which is fortified or tyrannical. Then you at +5, you get the first affix, and then +10, you get the second affix. But along with this, the other thing that, like I said, they're increasing the rewards from it. They're basically going to make it where right off the bat, like this has been a complaint that a lot of people have in Mythic Plus, is that for some reason you're still getting Whelpling Crests, which is like the lowest level crest that you can get. And they're basically going to move all of that up so that when you get to Mythic 0, you're not getting Whelp Crests anymore, which you can already get in World Quests. You can get Drake Crests from that, and then from Mythic 5 Plus, you will be able to get the raid tiers, basically, the Worm Crests and the Aspect Crests, allowing people to optimize their gear way better than they have in the past, which to me is a great thing.
Yeah, so this feels like a lot of how they had it originally, like back in Legion and BFA. Because I remember with like Legion, you basically went up to +10 and you did not get gear beyond that, or at least not much beyond it.
A lot of raiders didn't.
Yeah, it feels like with Shadow, or mainly with the Dragonflies, at least when I noticed it, it felt like there was inflation in like the levels for it. Like you can do a lot higher level now than you could back then with like the same skill level.
Well, what I think they're trying to do is actually what you're talking about. Because in Legion, once you hit the +10s and all that, your item level was the equivalent of raid gear. And so at that point, it was all kind of interchangeable. So you could do the raids as well as the Mythic Plus to be able to benefit yourself. And that's what they're trying to create again, is that you have this bleed over into multiple kinds of content.
Well, they have it before now, but it's like they're compressing the Mythic Plus levels basically to how they were back in Legion.
Right.
So they're like reverting the changes they've been making over the past a couple expansions.
Which I tend to like because it adds the level of prestige to the Mythic Pluses again. Like I remember when going past Mythic +10 was considered kind of like suicide, especially if you got the wrong key. And I'm not saying that like I want murderous levels of difficulty here, but I do like when people can do the +10s and feel like there's a level of prestige to it. Where
I feel like you have that now. So it's like now it's instead of +10, it's now like +20 or 25.
No, right now the level of prestige is at +15 and beyond, and that's where it gets. So like if you do +10 now, people are like, oh, what are you, like a baby or something? But if you're doing like +18s or whatever, then you have that level of skill that everybody likes. So I like that they're toning it down so that they're, and also in a lot of cases because of how dungeons work now, it is more of a skill game than it is a gear game, and that's why I think they can crunch things down and make it work.
I don't think they need 20 levels of Mythic Plus to like get the range of difficulty they want.
I mean, if you're in the Mythic Dungeon International, sure, +20, go nuts. You know, I don't have a problem with that. But when you're expecting people to do +20, +25, yeah, that's stretching a bit.
I think it's fine to expect that, but then why do you have 1 through 10? Like, what's the point of those? So now they're making it so like the Mythic 0, that's like equivalent to a +10. That's going to be a pretty good challenge.
And that's the problem right now, is that people are bypassing 1 through 10. They're not even worrying about it.
So what's the point of that? So like, okay, just get rid of them.
Which in turn for me, that actually hurts me because like I am actually trying to do the system adequately, where it's like, okay, I don't have a whole lot of time. I'm going to go do a +5 because I'm trying to get my Mythic Plus rating up and things like that. But then nobody wants to do +5 because it's baby stuff. And instead they don't even take you seriously unless you're doing like +15s.
Yeah, and now if you do like a +5, well, that's an actual challenge now, worthwhile gear for a lot of more people.
Right. And so at that point, it just kind of brings that prestige back in. It makes it so there isn't this wide gap where people feel like they're worthless, or where we have elitist bullshit people coming into my comment section going, how dare you come in and use heroic footage of time-walking dungeons in your mini-cast videos. I am going to make fun of those people to the day I die, Brinton. I really am.
I fully believe it, Adam.
Oh, I love it. I haven't mentioned this to you, Rising Sun, but I on the mini cast that I put up now, I will get at least one comment where there's like, hand in your gamer card because all of your WoW. First of all, you put WoW footage up there. How dare you? But then you put up time walking footage. It's called B-roll for a reason, people.
Okay, I need to comment on your videos.
Yes, please comment on my videos. I love it. So yeah, this is definitely happening, and I love that I love that the condensing is happening here, but obviously it's going to be there for season 4. So now we can get into the meat, which a lot of people have been wanting input on. Is now we have the unveiling of some of the hero talent trees. We don't have all of them. I should point this out. We have a lot of them, but we don't have every single one. And I tried to let because I'm assuming that, you know, if you had time, you looked into the classes that you cared about, but I tried to give you guys all of the unveils of all the stuff they had up until this point. And the funniest thing is, the day we're recording, they literally put up like 12 of those hero talent trees. So it's just like, whoa, okay. Well, I already gave plenty of homework to my 2 other panelists here, but now I'm going to give them a butt ton more. Okay, thanks, Blizzard. Appreciate it. And so we have a bunch of these. Have you been able to look into any of these? Are any of them in particular exciting you to be able to play, like in particular the classes that you already play, or maybe to go try something new?
If you don't mind, I'm going to start so that way people
Yes.
don't think that I'm just kind of like taking a seat back and it's like, oh, does Brinton really actually care about WoW?
No, not
like,
at all. Not at all.
I'm getting back into it.
Right.
I only took a look at Hunter for right now, and I like, just based on what information you did provide us and what I did read, I like both the playstyles of Dark Ranger and Pack Leader. So I think they both sound super fun, and I just would like to see it in action.
Right.
To get a better idea of what it looks like and how it feels.
Here's in particular, because I wanted you specifically to look at Dark Ranger because we had that one before we had Pack Leader, but I want to bring this up with you, Brinton, and obviously Rising Sun, if you see this in some of the other trees that you're looking at. One of the things we never considered is, yes, we know that these are fusions of particular specs. So for example, Dark Ranger is Beast Mastery and Marksmanship. But we always looked at that as like, oh, well, they're just going to generalizingly fuse the abilities and it's not really going to feel unique aside from that. But now the way that they look, it's almost like it does actually depend on if you want to be able to get specific benefits for it, you have to come in with your first spec being one or the other to be able to get the most benefit out of them. And the example that I had for this theory is Dark Ranger, in the fact that they have basically 2 different benefits that can kind of happen here. One is that you can get access to what are being called shadow hounds or undead hounds that basically are going to be like the dark visages that shadow priests get that slowly kind of come up to your enemy and then explode for shadow damage. And to me, that sounds like the way that you would get these dark hounds and get the most out of them is if you started in Beast Mastery. But if you start in Marksmanship, they would reward you accordingly because Black Arrow would get additional benefits, basically making you kind of a Black Arrow machine gun, rather. And in fact, you would also be able to get Black Arrow volleys that would be able to happen on procs and stuff like that. Are you getting kind of the same feeling out of Dark Ranger that I got?
That's what it looked like to me as well. And I feel that your explanation of it makes really good sense. I couldn't really put together in words how to describe what you literally just described. So
yeah, I actually like that concept because it makes you actually have to think, okay, if I want to be able to get the most benefit out of these things, I actually do have to have a starting spec that complements that. And I do like that aspect because it gives benefit to, okay, I'm more of a ranged player and I really want to get more of the benefits from the Black Arrow. I should really start up as marksman. I shouldn't worry about these shadow hounds. They're going to be a very mild part of my build. But if you're Beast Mastery, which is like the one spec that I've thoroughly enjoyed out of Hunter, I would want to approach Dark Ranger from this perspective and be able to get the Shadow Hounds. I haven't even looked at Pack Leader yet, and I'm guaranteeing you that that's going to be interesting, given that it's a fusion of Beast Mastery and Survival.
It's like it's they start off with the original spec and then like add something to it in a way that affects both specs in a similar way, maybe not quite exactly the same.
That's pretty much the premise, yeah. That they're going to meld the other spec into what you do currently.
I don't feel like it's melding. It's like you're getting a specialization that the two specs share, but you're still like your own spec at the core.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like how you have like the talent tree, the like class wide ones, how they can like they give all specs the same talent, but that talent can have a slightly different impact depending on which spec you are.
Right.
So this is the same thing, just like in more detail, in a more throughput as opposed to typically more utility.
Which, for the record, I like. I like that because it does like make your original spec matter. And so at that point, yes, the hero talents are going to be amazing and we should all love them, but it makes your original spec matter because that's going to be the basis on where your benefits are coming from.
Yeah, like just because you pick Dark Ranger, it doesn't mean you're no longer Beast Mastery or Marksman. You're still definitely that. That's probably the bigger defining feature. This is more of like a side feature to add on to it.
Right. And the example that, because like Dark Ranger actually works with that, but the best example for me as a Druid player was Keeper of the Grove, which is restoration and balance, because either you can get the benefits of Force of Nature, which I believe comes from the balance side, and be able to get treants that not only can do extra damage for you, not just physical damage, but spell damage while you're casting. But if you're a healer, they can go and heal minor targets as you're going along. And so if you came in as restoration, it buffs their healing. But I also do wonder if that's going to have a downside where it's going to lessen their damage because they're built in a healer spec. I would love to be able to have Blizzard further clarify on that, but it's still very cool and offers a very different perspective on a lot of these. In particular, the ones that I'm excited for, and you guys can mention a few of those as well. Like, I'm excited for Elun's Chosen. This is probably going to be the one I do for my main druid, which is going to be Balance and Guardian, because I love the fact of being able to have arcane damage associated with my bear attacks.
And that's where you like, especially you can sort of go down with Guardian now, where like you do a lot more arcane damage if you want to. And this one's like, okay, you're going to go all in on the arcane damage.
Right.
And well, for Balance, it's like a more natural fit. I haven't looked at Balance too much since I don't play it.
Well, the biggest thing for Guardian especially is that a lot of the benefits that Guardian gets that other tanks get better that we don't is spell damage is always still kind of a thing we have to deal with and we have to mitigate. But Elun's Chosen fixes that because of the arcane associated stuff with it. We now get increased spell resistance from it. So I like that too.
Nice.
It puts us a little bit more on the balanced edge in that regard. But it's not just druids. Scale Commander Evoker looks amazing to me in the way that it blends both devastation and augmentation. Dark Ranger looks awesome. I am so excited to get a Frostfire Mage and finally have Frostfire Bolt again. I have missed that spell. You have no idea. Shadowpan Monk looks amazing for Brewmasters and Windwalkers. Paladins are looking interesting, although I did not call the names or the titles right because I was pretty much assuming that Templar was going to be Protection and Retribution, Retribution and Holy, and instead is Retribution and Protection. But so I didn't call that, but it's looking amazing. The only ones that I'm worried about is Farseer Shaman, because Elemental and Restoration, it looks like they're trying to bring back a lot of older mechanics like Ancestral Swiftness that I didn't really like back in the day. And they're trying to bring it back, and I don't like that. But like most of this stuff is just exciting to me.
Yeah, I feel like it's like I like around 2/3 of it, which means that most specs I have at least one option that excites me, so that's good.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, unfortunately, a lot of the specs haven't been unveiled just yet. Like, for example, the only rogue spec that we have so far is Trickster, which is Outlaw and Subtlety. We don't have the other two. Shaman only has 1. Priest is also set at 1. We only have a few classes where we have all of them, but most of them are looking pretty exciting, and I have at least one variation on one of my classes that I want to mess around with.
Yeah, like Paladin, I like Herald of the Sun for Holy. Like, I like the Eternal Flame playstyle back in like Kata and in Mop and I think WoD.
Mm-hmm.
So I like having that back again. Light's Prism is one of my favorite abilities, so I like that's getting the focus here.
Yeah. Even protect Lightsmith for Holy and Protection, that's looking pretty interesting. The fact that you're going to have like spinning swords around you that do holy damage, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm not as convinced for Lightsmith, but Templar looks really fun for Ret and probably Pro too. It's like throwing hammers at everything.
Oh, I love it. The only ones that I'm not that impressed with what I'm seeing so far, Oracle Priest, which is Discipline and Holy, looks very kind of jumbled up a little bit still.
Yeah.
Trickster Rogue doesn't look all that interesting. Farseer Shaman has some issues that I'm seeing with it, and that's about it. Well, Conduit of the Celestials is also making me kind of raise my eyebrow a little bit. But overall, a lot of these are looking interesting. And Brinton, you said you only looked into the Hunter ones. Did you say you looked into Pack Leader or just Dark Ranger?
Both.
Okay.
And I mean, they're both very interesting. And I'm like on the fence with both of them. I don't think I lean in one particular direction to the other.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel that Pack Leader makes sense for Beast Mastery hunters.
Mm-hmm.
And Dark Ranger makes sense for like marksmanship hunters. So I guess good luck survival.
Yeah, we'll see what the third talent set is. Hopefully survival will get one that works well for them.
I think that would be absolute like a really, really good idea. How I decide to play, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what is left. Oh, Sentinel is left. That's the only one that isn't here, and that's survival and marksmanship. So yeah, that'll be interesting.
Because I also still really like playing Evoker, so there could still very well be a chance that we get into the War Within.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, Brinton, I thought you were excited to do the new allied race and play it on your hunter. And I 100% will be like dragons.
And here's the thing, like all 3 of these specs are looking pretty solid considering. Yeah. Like I like personally my pick right now is Scale Commander. I like what that's doing, but that's not saying anything bad about what Chrono Warden and Flame Shaper are doing. I think they're integrating augmentation and devastation very well into the preservation spec.
And I like Flame Shaper that just like released today, but it really looks interesting how it like ties into all of your different fire abilities.
Right.
Engulf seems like a great way to
almost feels like you are kind of, like the way that they're doing it, you're almost like Alexstrasza in a way.
Yeah, so Flame Shaper, I definitely want to try that one. Right. I'm not as excited for Chrono Warden or Scale Commander, but I would also want to give those a fair try as well.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, already I'm very excited with a lot of what they're doing with these hero talents. Obviously, I want to get my hands on them, but I'm not going to get that until the actual expansion launches because I'm one of those dinguses that didn't get beta access. So, and I'm entirely okay with that because I'm not. Given how busy I am right now, I'm not really looking forward to bug testing. You know?
Oh, yeah, I haven't bought any of it, so I'm not going to get beta.
So at that point, I'm very excited for what War Within is providing, and it'll be very interesting once the alpha and the beta start coming out, and we can start seeing like these specs at work, especially in the hands of top players, because they're going to be able to ink out every bit of damage out of them. In fact, speaking of Preach, I'm looking forward to when he starts doing class overviews. Because he's one of those guys that can ink out every possible point of damage in the DPS specs. And it'll be interesting how he does that. So that is going to be awesome. But unfortunately, that is pretty much all we have. Obviously, we're excited for both of these expansions, are we not?
I
Go ahead.
There's not much I can say about Final Fantasy 14 because spoilers for Adam, and
Right.
I guess also Rising Sun. However, at the very end of Endwalker, it was made very clear that there is still a lot about the world that we are exploring and adventuring on that we still quite don't know about, and that there are still secrets to find and there are still issues to resolve. So I'm happy and excited that Final Fantasy 14 is not over yet.
Mhm.
However, this next saga that we're starting very much does sound like we're headed into the direction of eventually Final Fantasy 14 will be done.
Mhm.
For the world within, I'm excited about that because we know that there's going to be
We know a lot more about that than we know about 14. That's the thing.
and it's part of a saga. So
Mhm.
it's not like what's going to come next is going to be built upon what we will be learning going into the depths of the planet, which is very interesting to me. I feel like in some capacity, this is what we should have done next after Shadowlands.
Right.
And so I like it just what was shared in the teaser trailer for The War Within was enough for me to be like, you got my attention.
Mhm.
I guess I gotta jump in and play again.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I think the only reason we got Dragonflight, kind of going with your point, the only reason we got Dragonflight was because we were coming so close to WoW's 20th anniversary, and one of the first ever expansion ideas that was going to happen before the Burning Crusade was even considered was the Dragon Isles. Like Jeff Kaplan wanted the Dragon Isles to be a raid in the first expansion of WoW. And so they eventually just said, it'd be cool to go look at this Dragon Isles idea, and that's why we got it. And so also maybe because they had so many problems story wise with Shadowlands that they just basically looked at it and went, we really do need to kind of shore up our storytelling and all that. Let's take this concept that's already kind of got a ground floor and we'll build on that, and then we can work on War Within in the meantime and flesh it out.
Yeah, it felt like it was a nice reset from Shadowlands, like telling smaller scope stories and less of a grand story and a lot of more smaller ones to bring things forward to then set up the next big multi-expansion story.
And in that case, it actually to me, because I've made this joke before that Warlords of Draenor is basically the WoW movie expansion is what it feels like it was supposed to be, and Shadowlands is the Warcraft 3 Reforged expansion, because that's a lot of the characters that we dealt with were the same voice actors that were going to be coming back for Warcraft 3 Reforged. So Dragonflight feels like those kinds of expansions, but done right. And so that's why in a lot of cases it's such a pleasant surprise.
I would even say that Dragonflight is quote unquote kind of a break from everything that led up to
You wouldn't be wrong.
what was experienced in the Shadowlands.
Especially with the time skip.
Yes. And I feel like there was so much trauma that was experienced by so many of the main characters while in the realm of the dearly departed.
Yeah. Or even BFA before that.
And then there came that the truce between the Horde and the Alliance. I feel like the expedition to the Dragon Isles was an opportunity for some of the more major characters to kind of okay, let me process what the fuck just happened, and let's use this expedition as an opportunity for this new truce to maybe this is a good opportunity for us to put the truce into effect and start building a proper alliance between the two of us, which would coincide with guilds not being not with there being not
and it would go in line with a lot of the cross faction stuff they were doing in the meantime.
Yes, thank you. And now that we've done the expedition, now that all that has settled, and the more major characters are hey, we've processed, there's something wrong with the planet.
Right.
Like,
and now we
hey,
have
guys,
this saga that we now need to go take care of.
It's like, hey, I've done all that I can do right now, and the planet's literally yelling at me. Let's go do something else because I don't want to stew with my thoughts anymore. I need to move around. I need to get some action in. So that's how I'm looking at it. And in a sense, you could say that maybe this is like the War Within could be considered DAWNTRAIL-esque in the sense of a lot of storylines have had loose ends tied. Let's move on to something new. And that's why and I feel very strongly that could be the case very simply because what we're going into is called the World Soul Saga. We're about to embark on something pretty intense, I feel. So I feel that a really big piece of this world's lore and just the lore of World of Warcraft is going to hit us like a ton of bricks.
Right.
And I'm here for it. So this is kind of like, I feel like the War Within is my blank slate into getting back into the game.
And what a blank slate to start on.
So I'm excited. Will I do it like immediately right at the start? Probably not.
No. Master's degree is more important at this point.
Yeah, I very much would like to keep my job.
Right. The other thing that I kind of want to add to this, and then we'll go to Rising Sun, is because I do know that this question did get asked, is that, we have all these reveals going back and forth. Is there one particular feature or part of both of these expansions that maybe in your eyes hasn't been clarified or put more of a spotlight on that you would like to see more of in the coming months for 14 and War Within?
So 14, I feel like I don't know enough about it. Like, I don't know enough about what DAWNTRAIL is trying to do to like know much about that.
Uh-huh.
I think for War Within, like Delves, I feel like that's something like we don't really know much about. Like they explain, like in general, it's like a instance more casual content. But what exactly will that represent?
Well, and the other thing too is like when they say instance casual content, that can change a lot in a development cycle, and so I'd like to see where they're at currently with it specifically.
Yeah, so
I could also see the community of players making it a hardcore thing as well. So just because the developers are saying, "Oh, this will, this is for the casual players." No, it's like this is very much for everyone, but there is going to be a group of people who are going to make Delves
that's what I'm kind of saying is like, how malleable are Delves going to be?
Because you can do them like alone, and they'll have like an AI to help you, which I think will alleviate a lot of the concerns with that.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be casual if you want it to be, but just like how will that shape how we play WoW?
Right.
Because like we have like dungeon raids, they're pretty much established. We have the outdoor content, which is like optional, more encouraged at near the start of a season. So like where will Delves fit in this? Is it like an additional like outdoor content piece? Do that at the start to help you gear up and then just like leave it alone, or is it something that you'll like still be doing constantly?
And more importantly, like as the patches progress, are Delves going to continue to be important? Because a lot of people are worried that Delves are basically going to become what Torghast was, where we were really hyped about it at the beginning, and then once the beta and everything like that and their decisions, their changes to Torghast had been starting to show, people started to lose that excitement because it wasn't necessarily what was initially advertised. And so a lot of people are concerned that the Delves will suffer the same fate.
Yeah, and will like they be mandatory if you want to progress, or is it more so like a side thing you can do from time to time? Maybe we'll get like crests or something that could be helpful. But with Torghast, like that was the only way to get the like soul dust, was it, for the legendaries?
Yeah, it was the soul ash that you needed to get, and that was one of the big things that people had a problem with, is that the craftable the Torghast and the craftable legendaries became interconnected at that point, and so it wasn't something that you could go casually do, which is how it was originally advertised, and instead it was something you had to do every week to be able to get your craftable legendaries. And that immediately took a lot of the fun aspect out of Torghast immediately for a lot of players.
Yeah, because like I didn't like Torghast itself. It was fun,
Yeah, it's
but
fun.
you need to do it like so many times, it got old quickly.
See, I was one of the people that did Torghast throughout the expansion, and I never got tired of it because each time I ran it was going to be a different build. Some were going to be good, some were going to be bad, but I could totally understand why people had problems with it because they made the legendary quest and everything like that requirements within it. And so it wasn't an optional thing anymore. It wasn't just a thing to go and get casual goods or whatnot. It was something you had to do every week. And that immediately took a lot of the allure out of it. And actually for War Within, for me, that's a big thing for me too, because delves look so amazing in the fact that now as a single, like a lot of my experience right now is single player content. So delves are looking amazing to me, but that could easily change as the patch especially when we start finding out about beta and how patches are going to affect it. So I kind of have the same concerns as you. And did you say you had one for 14 or you didn't have one?
I didn't have one just because I don't know enough about it to comment.
See, and that's kind of my problem too, is like I haven't seen Endwalker yet, so I don't know like where we can go from there, because Brinton kind of paints that really awesome picture, but I haven't seen it yet. But I can tell you that if I was where Brinton was, considering that this is going to be a brand new continent, the features that I would care about in DAWNTRAIL, first of all, I really want to see like endgame Viper coverage because it looks amazing. But I would also want a story overview of maybe some of the things that we might be tackling in DAWNTRAIL to get excited for. So that would be kind of my thing. Brinton, what about you? What features do you think maybe you would like more of a microscope put on in War Within and 14?
You guys pretty much nailed a lot of my thoughts with the War Within regarding delves.
Delves is really the big question mark.
I'm really looking forward to them. However, I'm also very hesitant as well. But there's really nothing more I can say about that. You guys really took every thought I could add and expounded upon it. So I don't have anything to add to that.
I mean, I'm also curious about warbands, but I think we know more about warbands than we do delves, honestly.
Yeah. I felt just like account-wide, pretty much everything for your account.
Pretty much. And I know that people have concerns with that, but right now I think that Blizzard is still listening to you, and they're going to try and make things work within the warband system to be able to accommodate you. But you're getting the warband system whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and in fact, I think it's like a nice quality of life thing. It's kind of cool, but I also don't feel it matters all that much.
Mm-hmm. I can see where it matters to some people because they're worried that certain titles and gear won't carry over, but I'm pretty sure Blizzard's going to work with you in that regard. And even they have said in their interviews that the warband system isn't going to be immediately overhauling everything in the game. It's going to be a slow thing that kind of progresses over time. So I'm there. But yeah, we keep cutting you off, Brinton. What was the feature that you were interested in 14?
Well, like you guys both already took the time to point out, since I am much further ahead than both of you on the story, and already have a very strong idea of what's gonna happen next. At the same time, I also am a bit confused on the direction that we're going as well.
Right.
And I guess for me, it's the feature that I am curious about is yeah, I get why we're going to this new continent. I understand how it was introduced at the very end of the Endwalker patch cycle. I understand there's a preface that explains, hey, this is why we're going to the new continent, and hey, this is why the player character is being requested to go to the new continent. But what does that really mean, and what sort of chaos, danger, or what are we being set up for? And then I'm kind of curious if Square Enix is going to continue to follow the same pattern of like how content is distributed throughout the expansion. I think this would be a good time to change up the formula a little bit. However, it feels like that's going to happen, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like that's going to happen. So like, there's a lot of unknown going into this expansion. A lot of unknown. However, I think it's the unknown that gets me excited and curious, and it's the same thing with the world. Well, the War Within as well. There's a mystery, and there is a sense of chaos, and there's a sense of what are we being set up for that I want to know.
Well, and I can definitely tell you just from trailers, there is definitely a different kind of MMO philosophy that goes between 14 as well as WoW. Because I think in a lot of cases with WoW, when they have been as mysterious as 14 is being with DAWNTRAIL, it's kind of blown up in their faces. The best example that I can give is Mists of Pandaria, because they tried to still keep the mystery there, and ultimately people weren't patient with it, and so they eventually just did like this big reveal press conference where they that's actually when we found out that like Garrosh was going to be the final villain of Mists of Pandaria. And so now they tend to not do that, but Square Enix has been able to pull a lot of that off, and so their philosophy has not really changed, and their fan base is entirely on board with them holding that back. And that's totally fine. It's both philosophies work. It's just from my perspective, like Brinton knows more than me. And so in that case, I remember hearing Brinton talk about Endwalker and saying that, this is an amazing capstone to a journey and everything like that. And so I look at DAWNTRAIL, I go, okay, well, if you had a capstone, then where can you go from there? But obviously, from what people are saying, Yoshida has a plan. And if he made it that way, he's got an intention.
And honestly, that's just kind of, it's my faith in Yoshida to continue moving forward. Right. Because he even stated before Endwalker came out, he flat out said, he even said this with Shadowbringers. He was like, when you play through Shadowbringers, it's going to feel like we're ending this game. And we're not. And then they revealed Endwalker. And he still said, the game is not over. While all of us were like, you literally named the expansion Endwalker. Like,
where can you go from there? Yeah.
It's like, okay. And again, like at the end of the main Endwalker story, it's like, okay, there really is still so much more left to explore, but I'm still left with but what am I getting, like, I'm about to get set up.
Yeah.
Like something bad is going to happen and I'm going to be in the middle of it.
Well,
and I'm probably not going to be happy.
What's funny about DAWNTRAIL, I almost, I don't know enough about Yoshida right off the top of my head to be able to comment on this, but I think it would be an interesting thing to go look into because, like, as WoW players, we remember hearing about, what about the other side of Azeroth? And that argument constantly coming into play, especially once we got the globe in Ulduar. And basically the way that he reveals DAWNTRAIL is basically revealing the other side of Azeroth. So at that point, I would love to know if Yoshida heard about that and just went, maybe if 14 did a reveal like that, it'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
Well,
I just love to be a fly in that writing room.
Well, there's a point in Endwalker. I'm trying to decide if this is going to be spoilery or not.
That I'm not even going to let you make the decision because I want to find out for myself, man.
Okay, I'm just going to say there comes a point in Endwalker where we get to see the planet in a different light.
Of course, because
okay, so you already know that.
Yeah,
so yeah,
I knew the basic premise that Endwalker does take you to the Final Fantasy IV-esque moon. So, yeah.
Okay, so while you're on the moon, you literally see the world revolve on its axis. So it's like, hey, I'm looking at continents that are not on the current map. Where is that? What is that?
He has
There's
to know
still-
about this
Oh.
theory, man. Yoshida has to know about this. And he immediately basically said, I'm going to one-up Blizzard. He
Well,
has to know,
he-
man.
While Blizzard decided to go into the planet, Yoshida decided to go on the other side of the planet.
Right,
So-
exactly. So, yeah, it's one of those things where I would love to see like memes of Yoshida playing 4D chess compared to Blizzard because it would be appropriate at this point.
my
Really
God.
quick though, to wrap up this particular podcast and this roundtable, we actually did get a few interesting questions that we can ask both of you and get kind of your viewpoint on, because we did a lot of MMO talk and things like that in the past too, that I think it would actually be a really cool thing to kind of wrap up on this particular question, which is, you guys have played MMOs to an extent, but you guys came in at points where a lot of people would say MMOs were at their peak, where they're the most that they could possibly be. So, for example, Brinton came in, I think your first ever MMO was WoW Legion, was it not?
That is correct.
So there you go. So WoW Legion, a good moment in WoW's history, and Rising Sun. I'm not sure if Cataclysm was your first MMO. Was it or wasn't it not?
It was the first of WoW. I played a couple of the free-to-play MMOs, like in the couple years before that.
Okay. So the question in particular is that now that you've seen like the MMOs at their peak, have you ever wanted to like go back and see MMOs in the past MMOs to be able to see like how things were before how WoW works now, or how Final Fantasy 14 works? So the best example that gets given here from the asker of the question is Final Fantasy 11, because technically there are still like private servers that will run it and that run it on like current day machines. So it's not laggy or anything like that. Or the other example is that Phantasy Star Online also runs on private servers and runs fluidly on those. Have you ever wanted to go back and just see like how original MMOs ever were?
So I thought about that, like when WoW Classic came back, I like played that, but like after a night, I was like, what's the point of this? And I liked the idea of it more than I like playing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I will be honest, like in my perspective, like it would be interesting to go into Final Fantasy 11 from a story perspective, because I would actually like to see what they did in 11 to see if it is better or worse than 14. And I'm a Final Fantasy fan through and through. I like to know the stories of all of the Roman numeral entries. But is it something that I want to go into the complication of going to a private server and making sure my PC works with it and all that? I don't know, because, now we have a wonderful thing called YouTube where I could easily look that story up and be able to see it from an overview kind of perspective. So the best way I know how to answer the question is yes and no. I would be interested. Would I go and play the game myself? Probably not. Brinton, what about you?
There's enough footage on YouTube that I've already looked it up out of curiosity. So I guess the answer to the question is yes, but I watched somebody else do it.
Right. And the other thing too is like the other ones that can be brought up is like EverQuest still technically exists now, but it's very niche. And I know that a lot of inspirations for WoW came from EverQuest, but EverQuest also has a lot of the early MMO tropes of like, if you die, you lose experience and you can technically de-level from it and all. I'm not interested in going into features that I already know as a game player who's been playing for a long time. Just wouldn't work for me, even in the sense of like, oh, it's totally a way to be able to show that you're hardcore. No, that's asking for stress is what that is.
That's just like taking the fun away from the game.
Yeah, that's where I can see where prestige can be fun. I can see where like going and doing a plus 20 of a particular Mythic Plus dungeon and being able to finish it and have that sigh of relief, that's fun. But especially when I heard when early MMOs did the whole penalize you with an experience, that just sounds to me like slashing your wrist and maniacally laughing while you're doing it. That's what it literally sounds like. And that doesn't sound fun to me.
Yeah, it's like the prestige of the MMO, like for raiding or the high level mythic. It's like you try a bunch of times, you finally figure out you succeed and overcome the challenge.
Yeah.
Versus like the experience loss, it's like your challenge is instead not to do one thing hard, but to do like 100 easy things without ever messing up, and that's just like.
And in my opinion, like the current day MMO world provides that for you because, now Classic WoW has hardcore mode, and even now there's hardcore self-found mode where like not only if you die it's permanent, but also it's not like you can go to the auction house to buy good gear or anything like that. There are answers there. So if I wanted to experience that kind of gameplay, there are already other ways to be able to do it.
Yeah, it's like something like the challenges you can do with various games. Those can be fun as an additional challenge, but they should not be part of the base game.
Yeah. In fact, like when it comes to Phantasy Star Online, I kind of wish that they would bring that model back a little bit, and not in the sense of like, I want to be able to pay for Phantasy Star Online. But the way that Phantasy Star Online worked was it was basically a third-person Diablo-esque game. And really, it's really cool because of the fact that Phantasy Star had those sci-fi elements to it. It would be really cool if Phantasy Star Online as a concept came back, but as like a Diablo-esque kind of venture, because right now there are tons of Diablo-like games out there that are really interesting to me. I still want to finish up Path of Exile. I'm even looking into things like Lost Ark and Last Epic, I think is the other one that's or Lost Ark and Last Epic that I'm looking into. And so having a Phantasy Star Online version of that would have been awesome. But that's about it, because a lot of these can be done in other ways that I think would be a lot more worthwhile. So that being said, so that's kind of the viewpoint. Like I love the history of MMOs, but there's a reason these MMOs are still around and very popular, and why those aren't. But that being said, that'll go ahead and wrap things up for the roundtable. This has been amazing, and I think if we do another roundtable for this, it's probably going to be to finally wrap up Dragonflight Story and be able to say whether or not it was a good or a bad expansion, given story-wise, and be able to kind of put the cap on that. Either that or being able to do a little bit more reveals for FF14 if we're able to get around to that. But in the meantime, if people want to be able to check out some of the content that you provide, Rising Sun, at Rising Sun Reviews, how do they do so?
Well, most content I've been doing lately has been on Twitch, which is Rising Sun 5. I've been playing Fire Emblem lately because I'm getting back into that. Also have some interesting ideas. Were you a fan
before? I thought you were coming in brand new.
No, I've been a fan for since I was 16.
That's interesting.
A long time.
Okay.
Yeah, so, but I wanted to do Fire Emblem content, been watching some YouTube videos about it, so that got me into it. So I was like, what would be a good thing to do with this? Oh, let's play Sacred Stones during Iron Man run. Something kind of casual is to do something.
Okay. Just curious, are you, because I think I tried to mention this in a stream, but the chat never went through. Are you remotely interested in this Unicorn Overlord game that Atlas is working on that's basically going to be their approach to Fire Emblem?
So no, some of the YouTubers I follow with Fire Emblem have been talking about a lot, so that's made me curious about it.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm actually looking into it, and Atlas has got that prestige as far as I'm concerned. So there's no question that they could pull it off. But it would definitely be cool if somebody else I knew actually was very excited about it.
Yeah, so I might give it a try at some point, but there's so many games, so it feels weird. Why am I going back to a game I played before? But
right.
That's what I was in the mood for. So yeah, I've been doing that. I'm also I've sort of interested in the world of Fire Emblem ROM hacks, and I actually started trying to figure out can I make a map that looks really interesting as a challenge for me. So I don't know what I'll do with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was bored at work this week, so my mind wandered, and then I got back to my hotel after the work for the night. I was how do I ROM hack a Fire Emblem game? And there's a lot of tools out there, so hopefully I can do something with that.
All right. And Brinton Volley, how do people reach out to you, aside from your personal answering service, which is me?
My personal answering service, which is you.
All right. There you go. All right. The other thing that I will wrap things up on is I just barely saw that. I love you, Rising Sun. I really do. So Rising Sun just barely left a comment on the most recent minicast that I did, which was in regards to the lovely complex situation. I'm disappointed in you, Drak. Using a dungeon from Legion. True WoW players use video from Season of Discovery, after all. Please atone for your sins by sending me a pretzel. Thank you. Have a nice day. I need more comments from you, Rising Sun. I really do.
I've eaten way too many pretzels this week, but that's a story for another time.
Well, now I want a
I'm
pretzel.
gonna like that comment.
Damn right. I'm gonna love
and
that
then
comment.
I'm gonna reply on the comment, and it's just gonna say vibes, nothing else.
Exactly. There
I
you
love
go.
it.
And that, as for me, obviously, if you're watching this video, thank you so much. And if you liked what you had to hear, give a like on the video and consider subscribing, because it definitely helps out with the algorithms and whatnot with YouTube. And also, because he advertised his, Rising Sun advertised his Twitch. I also do live streams. Unfortunately, my schedule is not consistent in any way, shape, or form. But we also do a lot of like retro content with myself and my wife, or Drak and Shadow Live. We will do, we'll stream together where me and Alex the Shadow Blazer will tackle content. In fact, we just barely finished up .hack GU episode 4 Reconnection. And then, unfortunately, the .hack event happened, and we didn't really get anything from that. Poor Alex. But you guys can check that stuff out. You can also follow this podcast on either the general RSS feed, or you can go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Player.fm, as well as Spotify to be able to check that out there, and all of the other podcast content that we do, including episode reviews of things like Rising of the Shield Hero and stuff like that. But in the meantime, that'll go ahead and do it for us. So next time when we come together, either it's going to be for the next Geek News podcast, or we could tackle even more MMO content, or even if you guys have some additional ideas, feel free to let us know, because I already know we're going to be bringing Rising Sun in on some of the issues that are going on in the anime industry to talk about that with the Shadow Blazer. So you guys can look forward to that also.
And I will prepare more word comments to leave on Drak's videos during the podcast.
Please do. They are a breath of fresh air for me, my friend. And until then, we will see you guys next time.